You know, every day here on the Thom Hartmann Program, Louise and I and our team, Sean, Nate, Shira, Dave, Chase, Sue, Nigel, Ron, we all work to put together the very, very best show we possibly can. And there's an enormous amount of work that goes into the show. And one of the things that comes out of that is a lot of content, a lot of specific information that we go through and we dig out and, you know, we want to share with you. And Sue puts that into our newsletter every week. And I think you will, if you don't already receive our newsletter, it comes in email every day, about an hour after we're off the air, or maybe a couple hours after we're off the air. And Sue goes through and pulls literally every link to every story that we talked about and puts it into the newsletter. It's free. We don't sell the list or anything. You complete safety and security. There's no charge. There's no nothing. Just, you know, plug in your email address over at thomhartmann.com. And you get signed up for the newsletter. It's all fairly obvious. You'll see it on the website. So check it out, thomhartmann.com. Thank you. We are reading from the Mueller report. This is starting at the beginning, part 1. This is page 32. And they're talking about the IRA, the Internet Research Agency, which is the Russian troll farm in St. Petersburg. In February 2017, the persona Black Fist, purporting to want to teach African Americans to protect themselves when contacted by law enforcement, hired a self-defense instructor in New York to offer classes sponsored by Black Fist. Black Fist was actually from the IRA. The IRA also recruited moderators of conservative social media groups to promote IRA-generated content, as well as recruited individuals to perform political acts, such as walking around New York City dressed up as Santa Claus with a Trump mask. And there's a whole bunch of redacted stuff. Redacted, as the IRA's online audience became larger, the IRA tracked U.S. persons with whom they communicated and had successfully tasked with tasks ranging from organizing rallies to taking pictures with certain political messages. Page 33. The top half of the page is redacted. Number 7, interactions and contacts with the Trump campaign. The investigation identified 2 different forms of connections between the IRA and members of the Trump campaign. The investigation identified no similar connections between the IRA and the Clinton campaign. First, on multiple occasions, members and surrogates of the Trump campaign promoted, typically by linking, retweeting, or similar methods of reposting, pro-Trump or anti-Clinton content published by the IRA through IRA-controlled social media accounts. Additionally, in a few instances, IRA employees represented themselves as U.S. persons to communicate with members of the Trump campaign in an effort to seek assistance and coordination on IRA-organized political rallies inside the United States. Subtopic A, Trump campaign promotion of IRA political materials. Among the U.S., quote, leaders of public opinion, end quote, targeted by the IRA were various members and surrogates of the Trump campaign. In total, Trump campaign affiliates promoted dozens of tweets, posts, and other political content created by the IRA. Posts from the IRA-controlled Twitter account at 10_GOP were cited or retweeted by multiple Trump campaign officials and surrogates, including Donald Trump Jr., Eric Trump, Kellyanne Conway, Brad Parscale, and Michael Flynn. These posts included allegations of voter fraud, as well as allegations that Secretary Clinton had mishandled classified information. On November 7th, 2016, a post from the IRA-controlled Twitter account Pamela_Moore13 was retweeted by Donald Trump Jr. On September 19, 2017, President Trump's personal account @RealDonaldTrump responded to a tweet from the IRA-controlled account @10GOP_GOP, the backup account of @10_GOP-TEN, this is not 10, which had already been deactivated by Twitter. The tweet read, "We love you, Mr. President." IRA employees monitored the reaction of the Trump campaign and later Trump administration officials to their tweets. For example, on August 23, 2016, the IRA-controlled persona Matt Skyber Facebook account sent a message to the U.S. Tea Party activist, writing that, quote, "Mr. Trump posted about our event in Miami. This is great," end quote. The IRA employee included a screenshot of candidate Trump's Facebook account, which included a post about the August 20, 2016 political rallies organized by the IRA out of St. Petersburg. Page 35. The top little bit of the page is redacted. It follows B, contact with Trump campaign officials in connection to rallies. Starting in June 2016, the IRA contacted different U.S. persons affiliated with the Trump campaign in an effort to coordinate pro-Trump organized rallies inside the United States. In all cases, the IRA contacted the campaign while claiming to be U.S. political activists working on behalf of a conservative grassroots organization. The IRA's contacts included requests for signs and other materials to use at rallies, as well as requests to promote the rallies and help coordinate logistics. While certain campaign volunteers agreed to provide the requested material, for example, agreeing to set aside a certain number of signs, the investigation has not identified evidence that any Trump campaign official understood that the requests were coming from foreign nationals. In sum, the investigation established that Russia interfered in the 2016 presidential election through the Active Measures social media campaign carried out by the IRA, an organization funded by Prigozhin and companies that he controlled. As explained further in Volume 1, Section 5, the office concluded, and a grand jury has alleged, that Prigozhin, his companies, and IRA employees violated U.S. law through these operations, principally by undermining through deceptive acts the work of federal agencies charged with regulating foreign influence in U.S. elections. Page 36. Item number 3, Russian hacking and dumping operations. Beginning in March 2016, units of the Russian Federation's main intelligence directorate of the General Staff, the GRU, hacked the computers and email accounts of
truth and justice, believers in peace, freedom, and the American way. Juma Mubarak, Shabbat Shalom, TGIF, whatever it may be for you. Happy Friday.
Wow. The Republicans in the House of Representatives just vote 183 of them. By the way, it's Anything Goes Friday. Anything you want to talk about, give us a shout, 202-808-9925. I got a couple of stories here I want to share with you, and there are others that we'll be talking about throughout the day. In the second hour of our program, Congressman Mark Pocan will be here for the entire hour taking your calls. And our third hour is also, well, it'll be wide open. It's Anything Goes Friday. So we've got a great program for you today. 183 Republicans in the U.S. House of Representatives voted against a bill called the Protecting Americans with Pre-Existing Conditions Act of 2019. And all it does is say that insurance companies can't kick you off if you have, or refuse to cover you if you have pre-existing conditions. Now, in the Senate, I mean, they actually introduced a bill last August. It was called the Ensuring Coverage for Patients with Pre-Existing Conditions Act. The Republicans introduced this in the Senate. It didn't pass, but the thing is, it actually reduced protections for people with pre-existing conditions below where they are right now under the Affordable Care Act. So, I mean, they're running this con job. The GOP, oh, yeah, we really worry about pre-existing conditions. Nope, we're going to vote against the legislation. It is a con, just nakedly a con. And it seems to me that, like, everything that's happening now is a scam. I want to talk about tariffs, too, a little bit. Maybe we'll get into that in the third hour of the program at some depth and length. But last week, or maybe it was Sunday or Monday of this week, you know, sometimes, I don't know if you have this problem, but sometimes my back just goes out, right? It's like, you know, you wake up in the morning, or I woke up in the morning, and it was like I could hardly get out of bed. And for 3 or 4 days, it was getting worse and worse, and it hurt like hell. And Louise made an appointment with my doctor, who's also an osteopath. And, you know, so they're good on backs and things. And said, you know, I think Tom needs some muscle relaxers. You know, no big deal. I wasn't looking for painkillers or anything like that. And Wednesday night, I took a 2-hour bath and drank a half a bottle of wine in the tub. And that actually fixed most of the problem. The next morning, I was much, much better and able to walk again. But that was, you know, yesterday, that was the day I had the doctor's appointment, so I wanted to see the doctor. And she wrote me a script for this cyclobenzaprine, I think it's called. It's a muscle relaxer. It's all it is. You know, doesn't get you high. It's not a painkiller. So Louise goes to fill a prescription, and the pharmacy says, and this is a $10 prescription, right? 10 bucks. And the pharmacy says, we didn't fill it for you because the insurance company
for your pharmaceuticals, your insurance company is saying that the doctor needs to fill out several forms before they will pay for it. And so she said, well, go ahead and fill it and I'll pay cash. She comes home, the doctor's office calls and says, we're not going to be able to fill out this paperwork until tomorrow, so you'll have to pick up your prescription tomorrow because the person doing the paperwork isn't here, and we just got a notice that the insurance company is requiring this. This is a friggin' scam. I mean, is this happening to you? Are you having to have your insurance company or have your pharmacy jump through a bunch of hoops every time you get a prescription filled? This is nuts. And it was a $10 prescription. And Louise is like, why are they doing this over $10? And I said, because, if they have 30 million customers, and this is one of the pharmaceutical, Medicare Part D companies, so there's only a handful of them. If they got 30 million customers, and they can get every one of them to pay for their own damn $10 medication, that's $300 million. That's enough for their CEO to take a bonus. It's like everything is a scam. It's just, it's absolutely bizarre. And now Donald Trump is advertising on Facebook. The Trump campaign is advertising on Facebook. They've been very aggressively fundraising, literally since the day after he got into office. That was the day that they declared that he was running for president in 2020. They've raised tens of millions, probably hundreds of millions of dollars. And now Judd Legum over at Popular Information, and Popular Information is a fascinating, a new newsletter website, whatever it is. You can, DuckDuckGo it. Judd is aggressively reporting on this, and nobody else is picking this up. The media is not picking it up, which is pretty shocking, that the Trump campaign is running false ads, plain old flat-out lies on Facebook, and they are literally reaching tens of millions of people every day. The lie that they're promoting right now on Facebook is an ad, and I'm reading this ad. I'll just read it to you. It says it looks like it's a tweet, right, from Donald Trump. It says Donald J. Trump, but then it says sponsored, paid for by the Trump Make America Great Again Committee. And he says, Democrats have finally admitted what they truly want, a repeal of the Second Amendment. Now, that's a lie. There's literally not one single elected Democrat who is saying we should repeal the Second Amendment. Not one. The only person who's actually come out and said this, to the best of my knowledge, in the last couple of years, is John Paul Stevens, who used to be a Supreme Court justice. He's retired now. And by the way, he's a Republican. He was appointed by Jerry Ford. That's the only person who said this. So Donald Trump, Democrats have finally admitted what they truly want, a repeal of the Second Amendment. It's up to the American people to stand strong and defend our freedoms. Sign the petition. The Second Amendment will never be repealed. And when you click on that in Facebook, boom, it takes you to a fundraising page for the Trump campaign. It's a lie. It's a violation of Facebook's terms of service. Judd pointed this out to Facebook last week, and for one day, the ad was taken down, and now it's back up again. It's like, this guy's just rolling along. Meanwhile, the Alabama Senate has just voted, the Republicans who control the Alabama Senate just voted that any woman who has an abortion after 6 weeks of pregnancy, and typically a woman doesn't even know she's pregnant. That's 2 weeks after a missed period. What, in Alabama, you've got to start getting super careful about watching your periods or something. And then how long does it take to line up and get the abortion? And how long do you have to wait? And is there a 72-hour cooling down period? And do you have to go through mandatory information? And do you have to drive, halfway across the state to get to the clinic and all this kind of stuff? Anyhow, 99 years in prison for the woman. And Brian Kemp in Georgia just promoted, I think they passed it, or signed a death penalty for abortions. Death penalty. Over at a Make America Great rally, right, one of Trump's rallies, they cheered shooting, a joke about shooting immigrants. This is from the Daily Kos, the tweet of the day from Adam Best. And day before yesterday, Donald Trump pardoned a soldier who had murdered a prisoner in Iraq. I mean, this is the pro-life party? Really? And finally, Tom Rinaldo. Actually, I think I'll talk about this later on in the program. Donald Trump is not, Nancy Pelosi came out and said, Donald Trump is goading us into trying to impeach him. No, he's not. He is seizing and consolidating power. He's eating your lunch right in front of you. And the more he does and gets away with, the more he will do. And if the Democrats don't stand up to this fast, we're going to hit a point of no return where he has consolidated so much power in the executive branch and possibly in the judiciary, in the Supreme Court. We have yet to see if John Roberts is willing to rule against him. But so far, John Roberts has been a loyal Republican all the way. Anyhow, I'll give you all the details on that later on in the program. We'll be right back. It's 15 minutes past the hour.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Oh, and Marianne Williamson hit 65,000 yesterday or the day before, so she's going to be in the debate also. It's going to get real interesting. I'm looking forward to these debates. And welcome back. Irene in Jacksonville, North Carolina. Hey, Irene, what's up?
Hi, I've got the answer to the cyclobenzaprine prescription problem.
Right.
It's paperwork that they want your doctor to do is called a pre-authorization. Mm-hmm. And because you're Medicare age, Medicare doesn't want to give that drug out to their patients because they're afraid of falls, because the medication can make you drowsy. And because there's a problem, old people fall, they break a hip or whatever.
Sure.
That's why they really don't want people our age, because I have herniated discs, and I also have osteoporosis in my spine and going into my hips. So I get muscle relaxants as well as the same cyclobenzaprine, and I had to go through prior authorization in order to get it. Now I get it filled all the time, and there's no problem. I think the prior authorization lasts for like 3 months, 6 months, something like that.
Yeah. And
then your doctor's office, if they're like mine, will automatically renew the prior authorization so that you can continue to get.
Well, that's reassuring, Irene. That it's not a giant scam from the insurance company that Medicare is actually requiring this, and that makes sense. So thanks for reassuring me. I mean, this happens to me about once every 4 or 5 years, and every time I go to the doctor and I get the cyclobenzaprine and take a good night, take a long bath or the next, just a good night's sleep, and the next day my back pops back into place and I'm okay. And it's been going on for 20 years, but. Yeah, okay, that's good to know. Thank you so much for educating me, Irene.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
I appreciate it. Great to hear from you. Thank you. Bayong in Hayes, North Carolina. Hey, Bayong, what's up? Bayong, watching Free Speech TV?
Hey.
Hey, you're on the air.
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, I wanted to tell you about ticker tape that run on the Ag Channel. American Feed Industry Association urges FDA to take a flexible approach to hazardous analysis and risk-based preventative control regulations designed to help animal food manufacturers.
What does all that mean?
Wait a minute. Minimize the risk of foreseeable food safety hazards that may cause illness. There's no such thing as may cause illness. It does cause illness, and what's referring to is wet meal products that have been wet milled with sulfuric acid and other chemicals, and then the byproduct residue is put back in animal feed, pets, and everything.
Huh.
And this is causing, in cattle, it's causing poliomycephalitis, and it would be some of the same symptoms that the baby calves had would be associated with the affected fleishmanitis that the children are coming down with. And all you got to do is eat enough of the products that contain traces of those chemicals in there, and it destroys soft tissue first. So the softest tissue is the reproductive tract, and the baby being developed that reproductive tract. All right. Therefore, that baby is damaged, whether it's animal or human.
So what chemical is this, Bayong?
It's sulfuric acid.
Huh.
And
it's used in milling grain.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's called wet milling, or what I call chemical milling. Well, like high fructose corn syrup made out of cornstarch, but it's broken down with sulfuric acid and then other chemicals added to make it sweet.
Right, I know that, yeah. Pyong, thanks a lot for the call. That's fascinating. I'll have to look into it. I appreciate the call. We'll be right back.
Every day here on the Thom Hartmann Program, Louise and I and our team, Sean, Nate, Shira, Dave, Chase, Sue, Nigel, Ron, we all work to put together the very, very best show we possibly can. And there's an enormous amount of work that goes into the show. And one of the things that comes out of that is a lot of content, a lot of specific information that we go through and we dig out and, we want to share with you. And Sue puts that into our newsletter every week. And I think you will, if you don't already receive our newsletter, it comes in email every day, about an hour after we're off the air, or maybe a couple hours after we're off the air. And Sue goes through and pulls literally every link to every story that we talked about and puts it into the newsletter. It's free. We don't sell the list or anything. You complete safety and security. There's no charge. There's no nothing. Just, plug in your email address over at thomhartmann.com. And you get signed up for the newsletter. It's all fairly obvious. You'll see it on the website. So check it out, thomhartmann.com. Thank you.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. And Tom in Woodinville, Washington. Hey, Tom, what's up?
Hey, good morning. So we've heard about Trump and his fake news and all that stuff, and then there's Thom Hartmann, who is completely ignored by everybody except your loyal listeners. How are you getting away with that? Are they just ignoring you? They don't want to bring attention to you? Curious about that.
If you were seeing the emails and messages that I'm seeing, you would not think that I'm being ignored, Tom. I'm definitely not being ignored. Nate in San Jose, California. Hey, Nate, what's up?
Hi, Tom. I'd like to get your feedback on a new strategy for progressives to consider.
Yeah.
First, I need to preface by saying that I think the great American experiment of democracy in the context of capitalism has failed. And I think the game is now rigged to such an extent that traditional grassroots organizing, could only achieve minimal and temporary successes. So the strategy I propose is for us to spend some of our spare energy and money supporting creation of a left-wing think tank. Mm-hmm. And I think it would have the express purpose of designing the blueprint for a completely new economic system. And, of course, above all, that system would have to preclude any mechanism for concentration of wealth and power.
There's already one. The Center for Economic Policy Research, CEPR.org, I'm pretty sure is the website. And they've been doing really great work for years and years. We've, Sean, who is the person who's the CEPR person that we've had on? Mark Weisbrot, yeah, and there's they've got a bunch of really good economists. There's a couple of really good progressive think tanks, actually. It's just that they're not funded the way that the right-wing ones are, and they don't have access to the giant PR firms that the right-wing ones have.
Right. Do you know, have you looked into any of their ideas? Because what I'm thinking of is some form of democratically planned economy where we just flip from supply side to demand side. And we could, fully participate just with cell phone apps on ranking, our priorities for the list of things the economy should produce. And then you could take, with supply side out of the picture, you take profit motive away. And now, there wouldn't be the same kind of pressure that causes corruption.
Well, yeah, the profit motive can cause corruption, just like the desire to run to run all four bases, and when you hit a home run, it can cause corruption, and historically has in baseball. People breaking the rules or messing with the rules or trying to bribe referees or whatever. But baseball's gotten pretty good about saying, we still like this game, and we still think that the desire to win in this game is something that, will motivate people. And so we're just going to rigorously enforce the rules. And that's what we need to do with capitalism, in my opinion. I think that, capitalism can function when companies are kept small and when tax rates are high and, regulated capitalism. It's working quite well in Northern Europe. And once upon a time, it worked rather well here in the United States, although, I don't disagree with you that a lot of it didn't get too big for its britches. But I'm not willing to quite burn that bridge before we try actually regulating it. Nate, thanks for the call. Ed in Altoona, Iowa. Hey, Ed, what's up?
Hi, Tom. I appreciate you taking my call today.
Sure.
I'll try to be as succinct as possible. Back when Bernie was announced he was running for the presidential candidacy, and I think I was probably watching it on brunch with Bernie on your show. I'm not sure, but I think it was probably that.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that he really wasn't interested in running for president. The only reason he was doing it because nobody else was standing up for the right things. Nobody. He said that's the reason that I'm going to put my name in for the nomination. And I realized that later on he said, if I don't get my party's nomination, then I'll bow out and I'll support who does run.
Right.
However, I was also on your show when I first heard Guy McPherson. And I do believe that if we don't have a planet, nothing else really matters much. Doesn't matter if we have an autocracy, a democracy, take your pick.
Right.
Who cares?
Yeah, we're rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic.
Yeah, no kidding. So that's why I thought that, okay, Bernie's my guy. I took the day off from work so I could go to the Iowa caucus because I work evenings.
Mm-hmm.
I went around.
Ed, we're going to hit a break in 40 seconds. For you
okay,
want to make
so
a point?
Here's the deal. I wanted, I thought that he was going to stay true to his form, and I felt that we had been kind of screwed when he didn't get his nomination and then he bowed out. I think he should have stayed in nonetheless, and I think a lot of other people probably felt the same way.
That would have destroyed any possibility that Bernie could. It would have diminished his credibility and his power in the Senate, and it would have destroyed the ability of him to run for president this time around. Had he tried to play spoiler against Hillary.
Well, here's my fear: if he gets a full head of steam behind him again, and then doesn't get it, and then the same thing happens as in 2016, and Trump then swept. That's my thing.
Yeah, we're just going to have to wait and see, Ed. I'm not particularly worried, and Bernie is not a sore loser. That's the good news, I suppose.
I'm not worried about him being a winner or a loser. I'm worried about the country. I'm worried about the world.
Yeah, me too. And I think that what's going on is that the climate crisis is so obvious now that I don't think there's a single Democrat who's not going to do something serious about it if they become president. Ed, thanks for the call.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
I mean, they may not be signing on for the Green New Deal, many of them, but it's inevitable. I mean, it's coming. We are reading from the Mueller report. This is starting at the beginning, part 1. This is page 32. And they're talking about the IRA, the Internet Research Agency, which is the Russian troll farm in St. Petersburg. In February 2017, the persona Black Fist, purporting to want to teach African Americans to protect themselves when contacted by law enforcement, hired a self-defense instructor in New York to offer classes sponsored by Black Fist. Black Fist was actually from the IRA. The IRA also recruited moderators of conservative social media groups to promote IRA-generated content, as well as recruited individuals to perform political acts, such as walking around New York City dressed up as Santa Claus with a Trump mask. And there's a whole bunch of redacted stuff. Redacted, as the IRA's online audience became larger, the IRA tracked U.S. persons with whom they communicated and had successfully tasked with tasks ranging from organizing rallies to taking pictures with certain political messages. Page 33. The top half of the page is redacted. Number 7, interactions and contacts with the Trump campaign. The investigation identified 2 different forms of connections between the IRA and members of the Trump campaign. The investigation identified no similar connections between the IRA and the Clinton campaign. First, on multiple occasions, members and surrogates of the Trump campaign promoted, typically by linking, retweeting, or similar methods of reposting, pro-Trump or anti-Clinton content published by the IRA through IRA-controlled social media accounts. Additionally, in a few instances, IRA employees represented themselves as U.S. persons to communicate with members of the Trump campaign in an effort to seek assistance and coordination on IRA-organized political rallies inside the United States. Subtopic A, Trump campaign promotion of IRA political materials. Among the U.S., quote, leaders of public opinion, end quote, targeted by the IRA were various members and surrogates of the Trump campaign. In total, Trump campaign affiliates promoted dozens of tweets, posts, and other political content created by the IRA. Posts from the IRA-controlled Twitter account at 10_GOP were cited or retweeted by multiple Trump campaign officials and surrogates, including Donald Trump Jr., Eric Trump, Kellyanne Conway, Brad Parscale, and Michael Flynn. These posts included allegations of voter fraud, as well as allegations that Secretary Clinton had mishandled classified information. On November 7th, 2016, a post from the IRA-controlled Twitter account Pamela_Moore13 was retweeted by Donald Trump Jr. On September 19, 2017, President Trump's personal account @RealDonaldTrump responded to a tweet from the IRA-controlled account @10GOP_GOP, the backup account of @10_GOP TEN. This is not 10, which had already been deactivated by Twitter. The tweet read, "We love you, Mr. President." IRA employees monitored the reaction of the Trump campaign and later Trump administration officials to their tweets. For example, on August 23, 2016, the IRA-controlled persona Matt Skyber Facebook account sent a message to the U.S. Tea Party activist, writing that, quote, "Mr. Trump posted about our event in Miami. This is great," end quote. The IRA employee included a screenshot of candidate Trump's Facebook account, which included a post about the August 20, 2016 political rallies organized by the IRA out of St. Petersburg. Page 35. The top little bit of the page is redacted. It follows B, contact with Trump campaign officials in connection to rallies. Starting in June 2016, the IRA contacted different U.S. persons affiliated with the Trump campaign in an effort to coordinate pro-Trump organized rallies inside the United States. In all cases, the IRA contacted the campaign while claiming to be U.S. political activists working on behalf of a conservative grassroots organization. The IRA's contacts included requests for signs and other materials to use at rallies, as well as requests to promote the rallies and help coordinate logistics. While certain campaign volunteers agreed to provide the requested material, for example, agreeing to set aside a certain number of signs, the investigation has not identified evidence that any Trump campaign official understood that the requests were coming from foreign nationals. In sum, the investigation established that Russia interfered in the 2016 presidential election through the Active Measures social media campaign carried out by the IRA, an organization funded by Prigozhin and companies that he controlled. As explained further in Volume 1, Section 5, the office concluded, and a grand jury has alleged, that Prigozhin, his companies, and IRA employees violated U.S. law through these operations, principally by undermining through deceptive acts the work of federal agencies charged with regulating foreign influence in U.S. elections. Page 36. Item number 3, Russian hacking and dumping operations. Beginning in March 2016, units of the Russian Federation's main intelligence directorate of the General Staff, the GRU, hacked the computers and email accounts of organizations, employees, and volunteers supporting the Clinton campaign, including the email account of campaign chairman John Podesta. Starting in April 2016, the GRU hacked into the computer networks of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, the DCCC, and the Democratic National Committee, the DNC. The GRU targeted hundreds of email accounts used by Clinton campaign employees, advisors, and volunteers. It's the Mueller report. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. It's 34 minutes past the hour. Anything Goes Friday. Margie in Wisconsin Rapids, Wisconsin. Hey, Margie, what's on your mind?
We need to discuss some of the insidious things that are being put in these pro-birth, forced birth laws that people are not talking about, and the implications are frightening. And that is, at the very least, both the Texas and Georgia laws include that they could charge the woman if she goes to a different state to get abortion.
Oh, really?
Where it's legal. And it can charge anybody assisting her to go to a different state with conspiracy to commit murder.
Whoa.
Make no mistake about this. These laws literally make women the property of the state. I've had discussions with people of, well, how would this be enforced? Real easy. Don't let women leave the state without a pregnancy test.
Wow.
Yeah, there's, these are even more horrific. Also, if a woman is charged with, if she has a miscarriage, she can be charged with a felony,
right.
Even if it's something as mundanely as having alcohol. Well, women don't always know when they're pregnant.
Right.
How do you force these laws? Real simple. Make it illegal for any woman of childbearing age, make it illegal for them to drink alcohol, smoke cigarettes, take medication.
Play soccer.
Go horseback riding.
Yeah, all these things can cause miscarriages early on in a pregnancy. I mean, it's, wow.
And literally, this is turning women into chattel.
Yeah.
You want this? You want us know what Saudi Arabia looks like? This is it.
Yep. Yeah.
And we're allowing, and people are like, well, the Supreme Court will overturn it because it's unconstitutional. No offense, I have absolutely zero confidence in the Supreme Court.
Well, that was the whole point of
any
getting
of the other
Kavanaugh and
courts.
Gorsuch on there, is, they're both anti-abortion Catholics.
And 100 Trump-appointed judges, federal judges.
Yeah.
You all think the courts are going to overturn these laws? You're sadly mistaken.
Right. Trump has appointed more federal judges now in 2.5 years than any other president in the history of the United States throughout their entire term.
But people need to wake up about this. But pretty soon these laws go through, women's lives will be totally under the thumb of these states.
Yeah. And this is Mike Pence's dream. I mean, this is, Handmaid's Tale. This is, Mike Pence, our vice president, who refuses to be alone with a woman in a room or have dinner alone with a woman who's not his wife. He calls his wife mother. There's a weird mentality here, Margie, that objectifies.
It's not weird. This has been going on. I've read extensively. This is their game plan.
Yeah.
It has been for over 40 years, and it's finally come into fruition, and that's why they're willing to put up with Trump, because they knew, because of the courts.
Yeah, and you look back at the anti-abortion movement, the Randall Terrys of the world, and most of them were men, the people leading this crusade. And also, some of these laws, Margie, outlaw hormone birth control, because
all of them do.
Wow.
All of them do.
So
take a look at the Ohio law.
Right. So
the Ohio law, literally, the Ohio law that they're trying to push through mandates that if a woman has an ectopic pregnancy, she can go to the hospital and have it moved, the embryo transplanted into her uterus.
Which is not a thing, by the way.
It's scientifically impossible.
Exactly. It's not a thing. It doesn't exist. It doesn't happen. It's impossible.
But if a woman has an ectopic pregnancy, that's the only way she can get medical treatment.
Right.
And it doesn't.
And otherwise she dies. right? You die
And
from an
otherwise she
ectopic
dies.
pregnancy. This not terminated. That's a pregnancy
will
that happens
never
in the fallopian tubes.
I will never forget the bishop who said, excommunicated a nun who authorized an abortion for a woman who was going to die.
Yeah.
And his response was, well, sometimes the woman dies.
Right. Yeah.
They don't care about women's lives.
This is the ugliest face of patriarchy, in my opinion. And of authoritarianism, by the way. You know, Hitler outlawed abortion. Mussolini outlawed abortion.
Ceausescu.
Ceausescu. Oh God, yes. I mean, you know, and then when all these babies were born in Ceausescu's, what is it? Albania? No, what was the country?
Romania.
Romania, thank you. When the babies were born, they didn't know what to do with them, and so they had these giant, you know, kind of like barns that they put them in, and nobody touched them for years, and these children grew up, you know, psychologically and emotionally stunted in ways that were deep and profound and unrecoverable. And
I know one of those children. Some friends of mine, after Ceausescu was kicked out of office and
murdered by his own people, by the way.
They adopted one of those Romanian children.
Uh-huh.
I know her.
Yeah.
And
it's got to be tough.
Yeah. This is what we're looking at.
Mm. Yeah. And this is a classic dimension of male-run authoritarianism. And I think one of the reasons why these male autocrats, it wouldn't surprise me to see Duterte doing this in the Philippines or Erdogan in Turkey. I mean, I don't know specifically, but this kind of thing. I think that one of the reasons they do this is to diminish the power of women in such a dramatic fashion that women can't, you know, by and large, don't end up in governance positions because they would moderate the autocratic impulses of these testosterone-crazed men. It's maybe an out there theory, but I don't know. Margie, thank you for the call.
I don't know, but I am terrified.
Yeah, I am very, very concerned also. Margie, thank you for the call. That's one of the best of the week. In fact, I'm going to say, Margie, you win the prize. I'm going to put you on hold, and she's on line 6, Nick. And if you would like a copy of my new book, The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment, we'll send you one. Jamie in Round Rock, Texas. Hey, Jamie, what's on your mind?
Hi, thank you. I was calling to reinforce your experience with the insurance scam because I just went through that last week with an eye drop for glaucoma. Mm-hmm. I just changed eye doctors. I have a very wonderful eye doctor now. They changed one of my eye drops, and I went to get the prescription filled, and they said, well, it's not covered by your insurance. It'll be $252 for 1 month.
Wow.
So I called the eye doctor back, and they said, oh, well, we're just going to have to do a pre-authorization. I had never heard that before for an eye drop. So they called and got it worked out with the pharmacy and the insurance company, and it's going to cost me less than $20 now.
Yeah. Now, somebody called earlier and said, well, the reason for this is because, you know, you're an old man, Hartmann. I turned 68 on Tuesday. And that the consequence of that is that, you know, they don't give drugs to older people that might cause them to fall over. And muscle relaxers can do that. So they just want to double check with your doctor. That actually makes sense. But if they're doing this on other kinds of drugs, you know, that aren't going to, you know, aren't muscle relaxers and painkillers, then I continue to think that there's probably a component of the insurance companies just, you know, basically trying to make it hard for us to you know, to have them pay for drugs. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely it is. That's why I wanted to call, because I did hear that segment, and I wanted to make sure that it got out there that it's not just a safety thing. That's a fault. Yeah. I mean, you know.
Well,
okay, thank you.
Thanks a lot, Jamie. I appreciate the call. Otherwise, we burrow into the, what's going on with the pharmaceutical industry. By the way, we just heard the House of Representatives is calling votes now for next hour. So Congressman Pocan, in all probability, won't be here next hour. So it's Anything Goes Friday. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
It's 44 minutes past the hour. It's the Thom Hartmann Program, exposing the con in conservative. We'll be right back. Well, welcome back. Johnny in Lamarck, Texas. Hey, Johnny, thanks for watching Free Speech TV. What's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom, at the start of your program, you mentioned how Donald Trump or one of the Republicans took out a Facebook ad that got temporarily taken down but then put right back up, accusing the Democratic Party, was it, or some other Dems of wanting to remove the Second Amendment?
He said that the Democrats have finally admitted that their goal is to eliminate the Second Amendment. And, no, the Democrats have not admitted that. No Democrats are even calling for that. The only person of any kind of profile who's called for it is a former Republican Chief or Justice of the Supreme Court, Associate Justice of the Supreme Court.
Yeah, well, the reason I'm calling is because this is kind of scary because everything about Republicans that they project onto the Democrats or liberals or progressives, they're guilty of actually doing themselves. So what I think is going on here is they're actually telegraphing what they're planning to do in 2024 or 2028 or 2032 in one of those election cycles or soon after. They're going to make it so where it's be illegal for citizens to own any handgun at all because that's what totalitarians prefer.
We'll see. We'll see, Johnny. I can see where you could go there in your logic. If you look at authoritarian governments, populist authoritarian governments, though, these right-wing governments, excuse me, what you see is that they tend to fetishize guns. They glorify guns. Whether it was, what's his name in Chile, whether it was Hitler in Germany, he had he actually raised up these gun clubs for good Aryan youth. Now, Jews were not allowed to own guns, but good Aryan youth, yeah. It's Mussolini promoted gun ownership in Italy. So and the reason why I think is because their armed thugs, their followers, their authoritarian followers, if they're well armed, actually add to the power of the state. The brown shirts in Germany, for example, and the black shirts in Italy were volunteer corps. They were the Proud Boys of their time. And so,
Can I clarify something?
Sure.
Yeah, I understand all that, and I did not forget about the brown shirts in Nazi Germany. But here's the thing. Republicans, they disregard the law. The law is for you and me. So when they make it the law that you and me can't have guns, the brown shirts or the current version of brown shirts or Proud Boys or whatever the heck they call themselves, they'll have all the guns they want.
Yeah, that's a good point. So
I've got an uncle whose best friend up in New York somewhere, he's got a whole room full of all kinds of rifles and another room full of handguns. Right. He's talked about fetishizing firearms.
Yeah,
Holy crap. And my family, they all voted for Trump, except for my brother.
Yeah, well, your uncle's probably
voted for Bernie, so it's not looking good, Tom.
No, I get it, and your uncle's probably a founding member of the Small Penis Gun Club. I mean, that seems to be the correlate to, large gun collections.
And he had a deer head on his wall for all those years growing up in Long Island.
Yeah, well, there was a time when that was not unremarkable, but I think it's become remarkable. Johnny, thanks a lot for the call. It's great to hear from you. It's always nice to hear from you. It's 48 minutes past the hour here on the Thom Hartmann Program, helping you win the water cooler wars, the place where, frankly, despair is not an option. We're not going to give up. We're going to stick in here, and we're going to fight this out. Stick around. We'll be right back. Every day here on the Thom Hartmann Program, Louise and I and our team, Sean, Nate, Shira, Dave, Chase, Sue, Nigel,
Ron, we all work to put together the very, very best show we possibly can. And there's an enormous amount of work that goes into the show. And one of the things that comes out of that is a lot of content, a lot of specific information that we go through and we dig out and, we want to share with you. And Sue puts that into our newsletter every week. And I think you will, if you don't already receive our newsletter, it comes in email every day, about an hour after we're off the air, or maybe a couple hours after we're off the air. And Sue goes through and pulls literally every link to every story that we talked about and puts it into the newsletter. It's free. We don't sell a list or anything. You complete safety and security. There's no charge. There's no nothing. Just, plug in your email address over at thomhartmann.com and you get signed up for the newsletter. It's all fairly obvious. You'll see it on the website. So check it out, thomhartmann.com. Thank you.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
At Thom Hartmann.
Welcome back. It's Thom Hartmann. It's the Anything Goes Friday here. Marta in Big Bear Lake, California. Hey, Marta, what's on your mind today?
Well, I am, I've watched the mainstream media and all media, and, I would like to echo what Mark Pocan said after the 2016 election, that the reason Trump won Wisconsin was because of the issue of trade, and he said he knows that for a fact. And I'm concerned that, we disagree with how Trump is handling trade, but I wonder if the media and the liberal media and, establishment Democrats might be more like, the progressive Democrats and have some empathy and compassion for, millions and millions of people who lost everything, lost their jobs.
Yeah.
And, their states have just basically turned, into very difficult places to live in as a result of trade policies. And, maybe we could show some compassion and focus on why trade with China is such a crucial issue to not just people in the Rust Belt states, but, southern states that lost, tremendous amount of manufacturing.
Yeah.
And, not show contempt like so many of my liberal friends. And, I'm white collar, and most of my friends are white collar. And it just seems like they say this, that people in the Rust Belt states, they're getting what they deserve. They got what they deserve. Trump lied about bringing back the jobs, so too bad for them. They should have known better. And my question is, but things were getting so bad before Trump, maybe if we learn from, why people are in such desperation, that, we can win the next election. But also, it's like the moral, humane thing to have compassion and to try to address problems.
It goes beyond compassion, Marta. The bottom line is that Trump's tariffs actually are helping some American manufacturers. One of them was interviewed on MSNBC this morning, a guy in Wisconsin, as I recall, or maybe Minnesota, who is expanding his operation. He makes parts for cars. And, the car company had been importing these parts from China, and now they're buying them from him. And, prices on things are going up as a result of the tariffs. A refrigerator might cost you an extra $50. But if the tariffs are maintained over a period of years, of decades in particular, what you're going to see is American manufacturers are once again going to become competitive. I think we have to have tariffs. George Washington was the guy who installed our tariffs at the beginning, and it was, Ronald Reagan and Bill Clinton who basically tore them down. And this is a winning issue for Donald Trump. And when he goes to the mat with China, even if it hurts him with the stock market, and by the way, the professional investors, they make money no matter what, so it's just going to hurt the little guys. This is an absolute winning strategy for him, because the average working person in America understands that if you make foreign goods more expensive by imposing tariffs on those foreign goods, over the short term, over the first 6 months or a year or two, yeah, everything's going to be more expensive in the stores. But eventually, American manufacturers are going to step up and say, no, we'll fill that gap. We can provide something at maybe not quite as cheap as China did, but you know, people say, well, you know, everybody's going to have to spend an extra $50 for their refrigerator. Yeah, that's true. But if everybody has a decent manufacturing job as a result of that, then you've got a virtuous cycle. You know, Donald Trump is doing the right thing the wrong way. And he's doing it the wrong way because he has no support from Republicans for legislation that actually imposes tariffs. Republicans have always opposed tariffs. This has always been a Democratic thing. And, well, actually, there was bipartisan. I mean, we had 30% tariffs when Dwight Eisenhower was president. We had you know, tariffs in the high 20s when Richard Nixon was president, and Ronald Reagan, for that matter, although Reagan started the real collapse of the tariffs. But I am very concerned that if Trump can keep this economy pumped, if he can get Jay Powell to keep interest rates low, and if he can continue fighting this trade war, he is going to be very, very hard to beat in 2020, and that really concerns me.
Can I just say, you know, I'm kind of focusing on the media because that's my background.
Oh, and they're so condescending, Marta. It's terrible.
Here's an example. Someone on CNN said, you know, this is going to cost the average family $800 a year. Okay, well, that's what, $75 a month. Now, we can choose to buy a used refrigerator or to buy, you know, produce locally, or, you know, we can make choices. But right. I would much rather that my neighbor have a decent paying job and I pay a little bit more.
I absolutely agree. And I think most Americans think that way, Marta, which is why most Americans are probably supportive of what Trump is doing. And we're seeing these economic and political elites who have bought into the neoliberal consensus, the Reagan-Clinton neoliberal consensus that you know, labor should have to compete across foreign borders, you know, and therefore let's drop the wages of auto workers down to $14 an hour, which is what GM did a couple of years ago, you know, from $40 an hour. And you know, it just screws workers, and everybody gets it. Louise and I lived for 7 years in Washington, D.C. We lived on a boat in the harbor. We had a 46-foot Chris Craft Constellation. It was made in 1986. They built the boat around the appliances. There was a refrigerator and a washer dryer in this boat. And there was literally, you know, we had to take out the huge windows and back part of the boat in order to get the refrigerator out when it finally died. It was made in 1986. The refrigerator was older than some of my children, and older than a lot of people voting today. And it survived, what, 40 some odd years? The washer and dryer still work just fine. These were old Whirlpool appliances, as I recall, that just were spectacular. And now you know, we bought a washer dryer a couple of years ago here in Portland, and they broke. One of them broke within 2 years, and it's like, oh yeah, well, why don't you just replace it? You know, it's crazy. I mean, you know, I think right across the board, Americans get this. You know, it would be nice to have good products made in America. Your toaster breaks every year. Your tea kettle breaks. I mean, for us, we've had to replace our toasters and our things to boil water to make coffee, you know, at least once a year, because it's cheap Chinese junk. And it would be so good to have stuff made in the United States that provides jobs, it provides good quality stuff. And the Democrats have to figure this out fast. Marta, thank you for the call.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
We say fight back!
We are reading from the Mueller report. This is starting at the beginning, part 1. This is page 32. And they're talking about the IRA, the Internet Research Agency, which is the Russian troll farm in St. Petersburg. In February 2017, the persona Black Fist, purporting to want to teach African Americans to protect themselves when contacted by law enforcement, hired a self-defense instructor in New York to offer classes sponsored by Black Fist. Black Fist was actually from the IRA. The IRA also recruited moderators of conservative social media groups to promote IRA-generated content, as well as recruited individuals to perform political acts, such as walking around New York City dressed up as Santa Claus with a Trump mask. And there's a whole bunch of redacted stuff. Redacted, as the IRA's online audience became larger, the IRA tracked U.S. persons with whom they communicated and had successfully tasked with tasks ranging from organizing rallies to taking pictures with certain political messages. Page 33. The top half of the page is redacted. Number 7, interactions and contacts with the Trump campaign. The investigation identified 2 different forms of connections between the IRA and members of the Trump campaign. The investigation identified no similar connections between the IRA and the Clinton campaign. First, on multiple occasions, members and surrogates of the Trump campaign promoted, typically by linking, retweeting, or similar methods of reposting, pro-Trump or anti-Clinton content published by the IRA through IRA-controlled social media accounts. Additionally, in a few instances, IRA employees represented themselves as U.S. persons to communicate with members of the Trump campaign in an effort to seek assistance and coordination on IRA-organized political rallies inside the United States. Subtopic A, Trump campaign promotion of IRA political materials. Among the U.S., quote, leaders of public opinion, end quote, targeted by the IRA were various members and surrogates of the Trump campaign. In total, Trump campaign affiliates promoted dozens of tweets, posts, and other political content created by the IRA. Posts from the IRA-controlled Twitter account at 10_GOP were cited or retweeted by multiple Trump campaign officials and surrogates, including Donald Trump Jr., Eric Trump, Kellyanne Conway, Brad Parscale, and Michael Flynn. These posts included allegations of voter fraud, as well as allegations that Secretary Clinton had mishandled classified information. On November 7th, 2016, a post from the IRA-controlled Twitter account Pamela_Moore13 was retweeted by Donald Trump Jr. On September 19, 2017, President Trump's personal account at @RealDonaldTrump responded to a tweet from the IRA-controlled account at 10_GOP, the backup account of at 10_GOP TEN, this is not 10, which had already been deactivated by Twitter. The tweet read, "We love you, Mr. President." IRA employees monitored the reaction of the Trump campaign and later Trump administration officials to their tweets. For example, on August 23, 2016, the IRA-controlled persona Matt Skyber Facebook account sent a message to the U.S. Tea Party activist, writing that, quote, "Mr. Trump posted about our event in Miami. This is great," end quote. The IRA employee included a screenshot of candidate Trump's Facebook account, which included a post about the August 20, 2016 political rallies organized by the IRA out of St. Petersburg. Page 35. The top little bit of the page is redacted. It follows B, contact with Trump campaign officials in connection to rallies. Starting in June 2016, the IRA contacted different U.S. persons affiliated with the Trump campaign in an effort to coordinate pro-Trump organized rallies inside the United States. In all cases, the IRA contacted the campaign while claiming to be U.S. political activists working on behalf of a conservative grassroots organization. The IRA's contacts included requests for signs and other materials to use at rallies, as well as requests to promote the rallies and help coordinate logistics. While certain campaign volunteers agreed to provide the requested material, for example, agreeing to set aside a certain number of signs, the investigation has not identified evidence that any Trump campaign official understood that the requests were coming from foreign nationals. In sum, the investigation established that Russia interfered in the 2016 presidential election through the Active Measures social media campaign carried out by the IRA, an organization funded by Prigozhin and companies that he controlled. As explained further in Volume 1, Section 5, the office concluded, and a grand jury has alleged, that Prigozhin, his companies, and IRA employees violated U.S. law through these operations, principally by undermining through deceptive acts the work of federal agencies charged with regulating foreign influence in U.S. elections. Page 36, item number 3, Russian hacking and dumping operations. Beginning in March 2016, units of the Russian Federation's main intelligence directorate of the General Staff, the GRU, hacked the computers and email accounts of organizations, employees, and volunteers supporting the Clinton campaign, including the email account of campaign chairman John Podesta. Starting in April 2016, the GRU hacked into the computer networks of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, the DCCC, and the Democratic National Committee, the DNC. The GRU targeted hundreds of email accounts used by Clinton campaign employees, advisors, and volunteers. It's the Mueller report.
You know, every day here on the Thom Hartmann Program, Louise and I and our team, Sean, Nate, Shira, Dave, Chase, Sue, Nigel, Ron, we all work to put together the very, very best show we possibly can. And there's an enormous amount of work that goes into the show. And one of the things that comes out of that is a lot of content, a lot of specific information that we go through and we dig out and, you know, we want to share with you. And Sue puts that into our newsletter every week. And I think you will, if you don't already receive our newsletter, it comes in email every day, about an hour after we're off the air, or maybe a couple hours after we're off the air. And Sue goes through and pulls literally every link to every story that we talked about and puts it into the newsletter. It's free. We don't sell a list or anything. You complete safety and security. There's no charge. There's no nothing. Just, you know, plug in your email address over at thomhartmann.com and you get signed up for the newsletter. It's all fairly obvious. You'll see it on the website. So check it out, thomhartmann.com. Thank you.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And welcome back to the second hour of our program. It's Anything Goes Friday, so whatever's on your mind. Nicholas in San Cristobal, Mexico. Hey, Nicholas, are you back down in Mexico?
Wow, it's been a long time, and I have a long, short story for you.
Okay.
I am back in Mexico, yes, after a hideous month in Kentucky. Apart from all of that, I want to talk not about me, but about health care, although it does involve me directly. I nearly died 2 weeks ago.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, it was really, really bad. I was hospitalized. They sent a team of 3 crack young Mexicans up by helicopter up the mountain to the new hospital here, which involved a virologist, a neurologist, and a bacteriologist because they were trying to figure out what was attacking me. I'm going fast here. There's a real kicker at the end of this,
okay.
and you're going to be shocked, I think. Number one, I'm incredibly pleased to be alive, and hopefully we'll slide back into chat as best I can, little by little.
Okay.
Thank you to all my friends who sent such good energy. Blah blah blah. I had around the clock, 24-hour, full-time registered nursing care at my side the entire time. I had doctors every 6 hours checking on me, doing blood tests every 6 hours. They tested everything. They did MRIs, CAT scans, a spinal tap, for God's sake, which I thought might kill me, but it didn't. And on it went. The care was absolutely extraordinary. They sat like a little tribe of Indian doctors around a campfire. They said they were determined to not let me die, but they could not figure out what was wrong until they figured out it was a series of viruses and bacteria piggybacking upon each other, doing its best to shut down my kidneys, my liver, everything but my brain.
Holy cow.
Turns out I still have a brain. The MRI was exciting to see. And I spoke with a nurse practitioner, not a nurse practitioner, a nurse overseer last night, a friend of mine in Kentucky. She said this care would have cost between $150,000 and $250,000 US dollars. Okay,
right. But you had this all happened in a small hospital in Mexico.
A brand new hospital here in Little San Cristobal. Yes, a very fine one has opened up, thank God, and I was very lucky, and the timing was perfect. The total cost here was $4,800.
Wow. Now, do you have Mexican health insurance, or is that
a shocker to anyone listening?
Do you have Mexican health insurance? Or
I do, and I do. And the deductible would be $3,500, and that's on me, and I could care less. I think my life is worth that.
But you're talking about the full retail bill that they presented to the health insurance company was less than $5,000.
Exactly.
Wow.
Now, to say something that is wrong with the U.S. health policy is to so grotesquely understate the problem as to make it a mockery.
Yeah.
Something is fractured to an extraordinary degree, to a degree we are almost not capable of understanding.
Yeah.
$5,000 versus $250,000.
Yeah. Wow.
This is not something that needs a little tweaking or rearranging or reconsideration.
Yeah, it's a broken and corrupt system.
Slate clean and start over.
Yeah, our healthcare system in the United States is broken, corrupt, and parasitic. I mean, my rant earlier, everything's a scam. Everybody's trying to figure out how to squeeze an extra few bucks out of the American consumer because we're the richest consumers in the world.
They're trying to get the last darn dollar, Tom.
Yeah. Yeah, wipe out the middle class.
It's disgraceful. It's a disgrace.
Right, and you've got all these healthcare CEOs who are taking tens of millions of dollars as their salaries.
Of millions.
Yeah, it is crazy.
So, I guess my message is that I want everyone to take very seriously, please, is, as Ralph Nader says, don't be angry. Be furious. Shout at every opportunity you can about this. This has got to be corrected. Healthcare is not just a right. It should be an affordable right.
Yes. Amen.
It's simply got to happen.
Yep.
I can barely believe how lucky I was for this to have happened here, where it did happen, versus back in the States.
Right. Yeah.
Oh,
my God.
And that's a terribly sad thing to say as an American citizen who is basically a very loyal American citizen and wants always the best for this country. But to believe that it was better for it to happen to me in Mexico is kind of sad.
Yeah, I'm with you.
It makes me furious.
Yeah, and me too. And I think it should all of us. And Nicholas, I'm so glad that you're better. And
glad to be alive, Tom.
Yeah, knock wood, yeah.
I'm back in the saddle.
Okay, great. Nicholas, thanks for the call.
God bless you for all the work you do.
Thanks, back at you, brother. I really appreciate it. Good talking to you. Thank you. Dallas in Lacey, Washington. Hey, Dallas, what's up?
Hey, Tom. You were talking the other day about, it's getting to the point where we just can't do anything about anything, and you can't peaceful protest because you're going to get arrested, and you can't get the government to do anything. But I think I've got a solution, and it doesn't include violence.
Okay.
To me, it's very practical and actually quite simple, and you get to stay at home. If a lot of us get together and we just decide that, we're not going to go to work for a while, and we stock up to get ready to hunker down for however long it's going to take, and we put out what our demands are, the changes that we want, whether it be universal health care or a change in government or whatever the case may be, and get some people together and put down some ideas on what kind of changes they want. We promote that to the government and say, okay, these are our demands. Right. Simply meet our demands, and nothing will happen. Life will go on. If not, we're all going to just refuse to go to work until...
What you're describing, Dallas, is what's generally called a general strike. And it's a tool that's frequently used. I mean, it's been used several times in France just in the last few years. It was used in Spain 4 or 5 years ago. It was used in Greece about 6 years ago. We've seen this over and over in developed countries, but it always it works best in countries where it can be coordinated and where labor has some protections. In other words, countries where they have high levels of unionization. Unionization in Germany is around 80%, same for France, probably Greece. I'm not sure what the number is, but it's got to be up there, Spain. And so in these countries, people can do general strikes, and they've got the in some cases, the union even pays them strike pay. And, I remember living through strikes when I was a kid growing up in Lansing, Michigan, when it came time to renegotiate the contracts of the auto workers. There'd be a strike. Sometimes they lasted weeks. And the UAW and the AFL-CIO or whatever,
The union was they paid people strike pay, and but I don't see how that can work in the United States now, when we have not only a non-unionized workforce, but a unionized workforce that the Supreme Court has said is entirely at will. In other words, you can be fired in most states for any reason at any time, and so American workers have no protections. And there's always a whole bunch of people standing behind you who are more than willing to take your job. So it becomes really problematic, Dallas. I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, what Ben Franklin said at the at the signing of the Declaration of Independence: if we do not all hang together, we shall certainly hang separately. And we're not hanging together in the United States as labor like they're doing in Europe. And that's why we are hanging separately. I love your idea, but I don't see how it works.
Well, it's
Plan 2. Plan 2. No, I get it. I think the thing to do is to work to build unionization.
There's not enough people out there to just replace all of us if we all decide not to go to work until it changes.
No, I get that, but I'm very, from having been an activist in the 60s, I'm very wary of anything that starts out with the phrase, if only we all. Because just pretty much, without an institutional or organizational infrastructure like a union, that if only we all thing just basically never happens. So, I totally support your goals, and your method works. It actually works. It's being used all over the world. But I would say since Reagan destroyed the unions in the United States and no Democratic president put them back together, that we no longer have the ability to do that in this country, tragically, in my opinion, Dallas. But if you could pull it off, I'll sign up. Thanks a lot for the call. We'll be back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Not sure I would strike. I would report on the strike and cheerlead the strike. How's that? 15 minutes past the hour. It's Anything Goes Friday. And welcome back. Justin in Lincoln, Nebraska. Hey, Justin, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom, thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
I just want to say this Trump economy, right? I keep hearing on the radio how great everything is, how well we're doing. But then, they'll come up with a story and they'll say, well, most Americans can't afford a cell phone, or most Americans can't get by with, or if they hit a $500 or $400 expense.
Yeah, half of Americans, $400, can't handle it. Half.
Right. So I'm hearing two different stories from the same place I get my news and my weather from. I listen to the radio, and it's kind of conflicting. I kind of wonder, what is there something wrong with me? Am I not understanding that?
No, it's a simple reality that right now unemployment's very low. The economy has been supercharged through all the stimulus that has come about. And frankly, the line that's going up is a straight line from where Obama started. So what you're seeing is the extension of the Obama economy. But it is being stimulus driven. It's being driven by stimulus from the Fed and stimulus from the tax cuts. And that stimulus can only last so long. It's like, how long can somebody, snort cocaine and stay awake, right? Pretty much after 2 or 3 days, they're going to crash and burn, and that's what's going to happen to the economy. But unemployment is low. But the thing that you're missing, Justin, is that employment in 2019 means something quite different than it did in 1980 when Ronald Reagan. Or 81, when Ronald Reagan was sworn in and began his war against organized labor. When Reagan came into power, a third of the American workforce was unionized. And whatever town you're in, if you've got a unionized workforce that represents more than about 25% of the laborers, that local union sets the wage floor, which means that, the numbers that I remember quite well from the 90s and the early 2000s, was that for every unionized job in a city, there's an identical non-unionized job that pays the same pay and benefits, because the union established the floor. So we had, heavy unionization, relatively speaking, for the United States from the 1930s, when Franklin Roosevelt first made it legal for unions to operate in 33, 34 with the National Labor Relations Act, the Wagner Act.
From that time until Reagan essentially, blew a hole in the Wagner Act and stopped enforcing the National Labor Relations Act, put in, for the first time in the history of the United States, a Secretary of Labor who was actually hostile to labor and in favor of the agenda of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. And it has continued. It continued through the Reagan administration. It continued through the Bush the Elder administration. It continued through the Clinton administration. In fact, in many ways, it got far worse. Particularly with NAFTA and the trade policies that Bill Clinton advocated. It continued through the George W. Bush administration, who again renewed the war on organized labor. It continued through the Obama administration, and it's continuing under Trump. So what we've got is you've got a lot of people working, but they're working for literally half of what they were working for 40 or 50 years ago.
Okay, yeah, and okay, so this Berkshire Hathaway meeting, that they did out in Omaha,
right?
They got Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, and I can't think of the other guy's name, Munchin. They're all sitting there. They're talking to this reporter, and their body language and some of the questions they're asking, it just seems like, they're not going to change their way of doing things.
Yeah.
They're just not going to do it. And I don't know, that guy who said, maybe we should all stay home and not work, I think we just need to put more pressure on our politicians.
Oh, yeah. The way to do this is to be in their faces constantly and keep on pushing, And also do everything you can to support local unions. Justin, thank you for the call. We'll be back. Every day here on the Thom Hartmann Program, Louise and I and our team, Sean, Nate, Shira, Dave, Chase, Sue, Nigel, Ron, we all work to put together the very, very best show we possibly can. And there's an enormous amount of work that goes into the show. And one of the things that comes out of that is a lot of content, a lot of specific information that we go through and we dig out and, we want to share with you. And Sue puts that into our newsletter every week. And I think you will, if you don't already receive our newsletter, it comes in email every day, about an hour after we're off the air, or maybe a couple hours after we're off the air. And Sue goes through and pulls literally every link to every story that we talked about and puts it into the newsletter. It's free. We don't sell a list or anything. You complete safety and security. There's no charge. There's no nothing. Just, plug in your email address over at thomhartmann.com and you get signed up for the newsletter. It's all fairly obvious. You'll see it on the website. So check it out, thomhartmann.com. Thank you.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
.com/Hartmann. Thom Hartmann here with you. John, it's Anything Goes Friday on our program here. John, and we're listening to Real Talk 910 in San Francisco. Hey, John, what's on your mind?
Hi, Tom.
Hey, John.
I wanted to get out of the way with you.
John, your phone is coming in and out. I'm going to put you back on hold. John's on line one, Nick. If you can find out what's going on with his phone, and when he gets it cleared up, we'll put him up there. Holly in Iron Mountain, Michigan. Excuse me. Hey, Holly, that's in the UP, right?
Yes, it is. It's right over the Wisconsin line.
There you go.
We're almost Wisconsinites. So you were talking about drug companies and pharmaceuticals and the problems people have with them. I'm a liver transplant person, and I received my liver transplant through Medicare because Blue Cross refused me.
Wow.
So, yeah, and I was 64 years old. Thank God I was that old, that I was just on the cusp of Medicare. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, I wouldn't be talking to you right now.
Wow.
So anyway, under my regular Advantage insurance policy, they are required to pay for my anti-rejection drugs because I had it when I was on Medicare.
Right.
Well, about a year ago, Blue Cross decided they weren't going to pay for it anymore. And I called them several times, and they just gave me the runaround, but I'm one of those people that I don't go away. So I called Medicare, and they had to call Blue Cross and say, you have no choice. You
Right.
have to pay for this.
Yeah.
It's,
This is one of the problems of the Medicare Advantage plans, because they're not actually Medicare. They should be banned by law from having the word Medicare in their name. They are private health insurance programs that are heavily subsidized by the U.S. government. Whenever you have a charge, whenever you have an expense on your Medicare Advantage program, a percentage of that, a large percentage of that, is paid for by the federal government out of Medicare funds, but it goes right to the insurance company. And
correct.
Yeah.
And I have a long list of medical issues involving many surgeries, and I have done battle with Blue Cross more times than I can tell you.
Yeah.
And I've had to call Medicare.
You might want to consider, Holly, going on straight Medicare and picking up a supplemental policy.
It would cost me more.
Yeah. Well, this is the problem. That's because, see, that's why a third of Americans over 65 now are taking Medicare Advantage plans, because the federal government is subsidizing them, and this is your Republican Congress at work. It has been for 40 years.
Yes.
They drill a hole in Medicare, then they come up with this Medicare Advantage scam, and it's like, we need to fix this. We need to have one national health insurance program, and we need to get these companies out of our faces and let them serve the ultra rich like they do in countries that have national health care programs, where if you
my family, as I don't know if you still have family, I'm second generation Norwegian, just like you.
Yeah.
And I have most of my family still lives in Norway, and they don't even pay a penny for their prescription drugs.
Right.
They pay nothing.
Yep.
And they just don't understand what's wrong with the United States, because, I talk to my cousins often, and they know what I've gone through and the money that I've spent, in co-pays and things. And they say, oh, my God, this is insane.
Yeah.
But,
and it really is. It really is. Holly, thank you for sharing your story with us, and spot on. I want to get one more caller in here before we hit a hard break, though. Holly, thank you for the call. Bill in Las Vegas. Hey, Bill, what's up?
Hey, Tom. It's been a while. Always good to talk to you.
Thank you. Back at you.
I came across an article on Wonkette a couple days ago talking about the Ohio abortion ban. And further down in the article, it mentioned a law in Georgia, and there was something very disturbing in there. Aside from their desire to imprison women who miscarry, it said in Georgia, under their law, fetuses will now be considered full-on citizens for the purpose of the census. And I don't understand how they could possibly get away with that in terms of federal constitutionality.
Yeah, well, this is, Cory Gardner, back when he was running for the Senate in Colorado, was backing a personhood bill like this, and then denied that he was. And then Mara Liasson on NPR went on the air and lied about him saying that he wasn't supporting it. He was. This is, the Republicans pull this out whenever they need to drag along the religious right to push them over the top in an election. I think as these laws start getting passed, where if a woman has a miscarriage, she may end up going to jail for the rest of her life, or in Georgia, she may be facing the death penalty, and increasingly they're outlawing birth control pills, just normal birth control pills. I think that it's going to start to sink in to some of these Republican voters that they've been had. This is serious stuff, Bill. Bill, thanks a lot for the call. This is very serious stuff, and we need to be taking it seriously. It's 27 minutes, well, coming up on 28 minutes past the hour here on the Thom Hartmann Program. Got a break here at the bottom of the hour. We'll continue with your phone calls on Anything Goes Friday. Stick around.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Speaking the truth, some multinational corporations and apparently the insurance companies would really rather you didn't know about. Thom Hartmann here with you. We'll be back. We are reading from the Mueller report. This is starting at the beginning, part 1. This is page 32. And they're talking about the IRA, the Internet Research Agency, which is the Russian troll farm in St. Petersburg. In February 2017, the persona Black Fist, purporting to want to teach African Americans to protect themselves when contacted by law enforcement, hired a self-defense instructor in New York to offer classes sponsored by Black Fist. Black Fist was actually from the IRA. The IRA also recruited moderators of conservative social media groups to promote IRA-generated content, as well as recruited individuals to perform political acts, such as walking around New York City dressed up as Santa Claus with a Trump mask. And there's a whole bunch of redacted stuff. Redacted, as the IRA's online audience became larger, the IRA tracked U.S. persons with whom they communicated and had successfully tasked with tasks ranging from organizing rallies to taking pictures with certain political messages. Page 33. The top half of the page is redacted. Number 7, interactions and contacts with the Trump campaign. The investigation identified 2 different forms of connections between the IRA and members of the Trump campaign. The investigation identified no similar connections between the IRA and the Clinton campaign. First, on multiple occasions, members and surrogates of the Trump campaign promoted, typically by linking, retweeting, or similar methods of reposting, pro-Trump or anti-Clinton content published by the IRA through IRA-controlled social media accounts. Additionally, in a few instances, IRA employees represented themselves as U.S. persons to communicate with members of the Trump campaign in an effort to seek assistance and coordination on IRA-organized political rallies inside the United States. Subtopic A, Trump campaign promotion of IRA political materials. Among the U.S., quote, leaders of public opinion, end quote, targeted by the IRA were various members and surrogates of the Trump campaign. In total, Trump campaign affiliates promoted dozens of tweets, posts, and other political content created by the IRA. Posts from the IRA-controlled Twitter account at 10_GOP were cited or retweeted by multiple Trump campaign officials and surrogates, including Donald Trump Jr., Eric Trump, Kellyanne Conway, Brad Parscale, and Michael Flynn. These posts included allegations of voter fraud, as well as allegations that Secretary Clinton had mishandled classified information. On November 7th, 2016, a post from the IRA-controlled Twitter account Pamela_Moore13 was retweeted by Donald Trump Jr. On September 19, 2017, President Trump's personal account @RealDonaldTrump responded to a tweet from the IRA-controlled account @10GOP_GOP, the backup account of @10_GOP_TEN, this is not 10, which had already been deactivated by Twitter. The tweet read, "We love you, Mr. President." IRA employees monitored the reaction of the Trump campaign and later Trump administration officials to their tweets. For example, on August 23, 2016, the IRA-controlled persona Matt Skyber Facebook account sent a message to the U.S. Tea Party activist, writing that, quote, "Mr. Trump posted about our event in Miami. This is great," end quote. The IRA employee included a screenshot of candidate Trump's Facebook account, which included a post about the August 20, 2016 political rallies organized by the IRA out of St. Petersburg. Page 35. The top little bit of the page is redacted. It follows B, contact with Trump campaign officials in connection to rallies. Starting in June 2016, the IRA contacted different U.S. persons affiliated with the Trump campaign in an effort to coordinate pro-Trump organized rallies inside the United States. In all cases, the IRA contacted the campaign while claiming to be U.S. political activists working on behalf of a conservative grassroots organization. The IRA's contacts included requests for signs and other materials to use at rallies, as well as requests to promote the rallies and help coordinate logistics. While certain campaign volunteers agreed to provide the requested material, for example, agreeing to set aside a certain number of signs, the investigation has not identified evidence that any Trump campaign official understood that the requests were coming from foreign nationals. In sum, the investigation established that Russia interfered in the 2016 presidential election through the Active Measures social media campaign carried out by the IRA, an organization funded by Prigozhin and companies that he controlled. As explained further in Volume 1, Section 5, the office concluded, and a grand jury has alleged, that Prigozhin, his companies, and IRA employees violated U.S. law through these operations, principally by undermining through deceptive acts the work of federal agencies charged with regulating foreign influence in U.S. elections. Page 36, item number 3, Russian hacking and dumping operations. Beginning in March 2016, units of the Russian Federation's main intelligence directorate of the General Staff, the GRU, hacked the computers and email accounts of organizations, employees, and volunteers supporting the Clinton campaign, including the email account of campaign chairman John Podesta. Starting in April 2016, the GRU hacked into the computer networks of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, the DCCC, and the Democratic National Committee, the DNC. The GRU targeted hundreds of email accounts used by Clinton campaign employees, advisors, and volunteers. It's the Mueller report.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Just a couple of points I want to make very, very quickly. Donald Trump is not goading. I've seen this phrase now 3 or 4 times from Ted Lieu, from Nancy Pelosi. Donald Trump is trying to provoke us. He's trying to push us. He's trying to goad us into impeaching him. He thinks impeachment will be good for him politically. I don't think any of that's true. I think what Donald Trump is doing is consolidating his power. That's pure and simple. Full stop. He is turning himself into an emperor. He is the Augustus Caesar of this republic, the first emperor of Rome. That's what's going on. And then you get this argument from the Democrats of, well, you know, why should we try to impeach him when he won't get convicted in the Senate? Now, these are the same Democrats who just passed legislation to protect people from their insurance company, kicking them off their plans if they have pre-existing conditions, who have passed a gun reform bill, a gun control bill, who have passed a bill rejecting Trump's phony baloney stuff at the border, a bill to declare net neutrality, an election reform bill, a bill to say we should be part of the Paris Accord. Every single one of those bills passed the House and will die in the Senate. So why did they do it in the House? Because it demonstrates to voters who they are. And that's why they should be holding impeachment hearings right now in the House of Representatives, whether it dies in the Senate or not. Because it tells the voters that we are not going to put up with a man who is gathering power the way that Donald Trump is and abusing power the way Donald Trump is, that is antithetical to the principles of American democracy in a functioning republic. Anyhow, rant done. Marilyn in Sun City, West Arizona. Hey, Marilyn, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. Well, as your resident Canadian, because I'm from there, I love hearing Nicholas wherever he was in Mexico talking about how...
Marilyn, forgive my interruption, but for some reason, I can hardly understand what you're saying. I don't know if your thumb is over the microphone or if I'm on some kind of weird speakerphone or something.
Is this better?
Yes, now I can understand you.
Okay. I'm so sorry. So all I wanted to say quickly is we should have all read the writing on the wall. Before Trump took office in January of 2017, when the Republicans got into the House and the Senate, and their first order of business in January, before the inauguration, their first order of business was to get rid of the Independent Ethics Committee. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Under Robert Goodlatte?
Yes.
And I think that should have, I mean, who does that? Who, before they put any legislation out, before they do anything, the first thing they want to do is get rid of the ethics committee.
This is the final takeover of America by right-wing billionaires. And Donald Trump is one of them, by the way. People keep forgetting. He is a right-wing billionaire, and he was put into place by Robert Mercer and Shelley Adelson, 2 other right-wing billionaires. And now probably in all probability the Koch network will be supporting him for 2020, more right-wing billionaires. And he's got a bunch of libertarian billionaires who are supporting him. Yeah, I think this is a massive power grab that is just spitting in the face.
for a long time. It's been coming, and it's been planned and well thought out, and the Democratic Party has to get together and unite and realize that who cares what's going to happen after? There's a fire in the White House, and we need to extinguish it.
Yeah, the Democrats have to realize that they are at war right now. This is war. Marilyn, thank you for the call. Michael in Los Angeles. Hey, Michael, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. Thanks for taking my call. Happy Friday to you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to ask you, I just wanted to pick your brain real quick, if I can, about kind of like identity politics. Remember a couple of weeks ago, Bernie Sanders was at that She the People conference, I think that's what it's called.
Yeah.
And somebody asked him a question about, what are you going to do about, if you become president, what are you going to do about this rise in white nationalism and about this violence? And to me, he kind of gave somewhat of like a cookie-cutter answer. He kind of started talking about how he marched with Martin Luther King and how he helped out Jesse Jackson and stuff like that.
Right.
And I don't know. I kind of feel like, that wasn't directly answering the question, but at the same time, I kind of feel sorry for a lot of these politicians out here who are kind of put in the spot like, well, what are you going to do about this and what are you going to do about that? And they really don't know how to answer the question. It's just like, I just want to know what your feelings were towards that.
Bernie has been fighting for civil rights since he was a teenager. I mean, he was arrested as a teenager fighting for civil rights. So it's not like this is like he's a Johnny-come-lately to this. And I think that's what he was trying to say. But you're right. What people wanted was policy suggestions. And when Elizabeth Warren came up to the microphone and they asked her a very similar question, she had a couple of really specific policy answers that were just great. And, I think Bernie blew it there. It happens. Politicians are not perfect, and Bernie is certainly not perfect. I mean, none of us are. He should have answered it differently. He should have pulled up some policy stuff, frankly. But I don't think that makes him unelectable. And also, I think that there's still a lot of anger, particularly among African-American women who were the real champions for Hillary Clinton, among the Democratic electorate, that Bernie had the audacity to challenge her in the primary, because there is some truth to the fact that when a person running for president has a serious primary challenge, we know it's true for incumbents. When they have a serious challenge, it reduces the chances that they get reelected. But even in this case, I think that there were probably quite a few Bernie voters who either didn't vote for Hillary Clinton, didn't vote at all, or some of them even voted for Donald Trump. So, there's people who feel burned by that, and I understand that. I mean, it's a legitimate feeling. Although we should celebrate democracy and the ability of people to challenge people in elections. But there were a lot of people who felt that our first woman president was just as consequential as our first African-American president, and therefore, we should be hands off and all hands on deck supporting her and all that kind of stuff. And so, that's the hole that Bernie has to dig himself out of. And that's a hole, by the way, that Elizabeth Warren is not in. And so as the two leading progressive candidates, I think that puts her at somewhat of an advantage over Bernie. On the other hand, Bernie has all these supporters and people who know him very, very well. People like me who, he was on my program for 11 years. I mean, I know exactly what he thinks on pretty much every issue. And I can't think of a single one where we have a disagreement. And so, we'll just see how it all shakes out. I mean, frankly, I am this year any Democrat. It's like, any Democrat. Yeah. And I truly believe any Democrat can beat Barack Obama, or can beat Donald Trump. Barack Obama. God, if only Barack Obama were still our president. So, Michael, anyhow, those are my thoughts on that. Thanks a lot for the call. It's great to hear from you. Max in Missouri City, Texas. Hey, Max, what's on your mind? Thanks for watching us on YouTube. What's up?
Hey, Tom. Well, I just want to say one thing. I'll keep my topic really short. It's actually just an extension of a conversation you had with another lady from Texas earlier. But I also want to give a shout-out to Nick in Mexico from earlier. That's an incredible story, and congratulations to him on being able to get through something like that, especially down in Mexico. Anyways, you were speaking earlier to a lady about the trade wars that Trump has, and I just want to say that I completely agree with you on that. I think that
Max, if I may interrupt you for just a moment, for people who just tuned in, which is because you're on talk radio, your audience, about a third of your audience changes every 15 minutes. For people who don't know what Max and I are talking about, somebody called in and talked about Trump's tariffs, and her concern was
so many Americans, she was from the Midwest, so many as I recall, or maybe not, wherever she was from, so many Americans know that the changes in our trade policy that took place principally under Reagan and Clinton, with signing NAFTA and the permanent normal trade relations with China, those were both Clinton's work. Reagan had his own variations on that, combined with Reagan's attacks on organized labor, that all of these things in total have destroyed not only a lot of American jobs, but a lot of good-paying American jobs, and that tariffs were what protected this country. And if they've looked at any history at all, they know that that's why George Washington put them in place in 1791, and why they stayed in place right up through the Reagan administration and through the Clinton administrations. And I think that average Americans get it, that Trump is actually right on tariffs. He's not doing it necessarily the right way, but their understanding of it is not that sophisticated. They get it that he's fighting for them, and I think that, and even if the stock market goes down, he wins politically huge on this issue. And the Democrats need to start listening to people like Sherrod Brown and Bernie Sanders, the champion progressives who have for years been calling for a protectionist trade policy. Okay, let me toss it to you, Max.
Well, that's right, Tom. You're exactly right. I completely agree with that. The addition that I was going to add to that argument was, I don't think a lot of Americans see, I'm an electronics engineer. There are no more jobs for me in this country. I mean, they're all gone. They're in China and they're in other places. Software is where everything is pretty much going now. But I just want to say that I don't think a lot of Americans notice that the reality behind a lot of the inflation and a lot of the things that we're seeing in our country, where they're not able to pay for things and that we're not making enough, is actually a direct result of pseudo-inflation that's created by the corporations. And really, they're not making a whole lot more money by shipping the jobs overseas. What it does is it just gives them the ability to control the money that they're making a little bit better, instead of putting it in the pockets of Americans who have jobs.
Yeah, and to intimidate the remaining American workers. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Max, brilliant. I gotta run. We're hitting the break here, but thank you for the call. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
We'll be back with more of your calls. It's Anything Goes Friday. Plus, we're going to check in about 4 minutes with... Talk Media News is going to be at the end of the next hour. Yeah, so we'll continue the calls. Stick around. And welcome back. Carlos in Thousand Oaks, California. Hey, Carlos, what's on your mind today?
Yeah, Tom, thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
I was thinking about just kind of passing around this idea that, Reagan formed a pump that pumped money up the hill and said that it was going to trickle down and never trickle down into our pockets.
Right.
So I look at economics as the grease that causes human interaction and change within, exchange of, I'm a little nervous, exchange of goods and services. But you don't really need currency to do that. And you could actually devalue currency overnight and have a cryptocurrency where 1 hour equals 1 hour. And all the years of industrial exploitation, where industrialization was supposed to enrich people and give us more time, it hasn't done that. It's taking away our time. And we're not learning how to live sustainably with the planet and the people. And we have to reorient this planet in thinking about quality of life rather than thinking about only cash and currency. And I think the fastest way to do that is to basically erase wealth.
I get what you're saying, Carlos. Jack Vance is one of my favorite authors. In fact, he became a friend before he died. And he's a science fiction writer. And in his novels that take place across the Gaian Reach, way out in the universe, all these populated planets, the universal currency is called the SVU, the single value unit. And one SVU represents 1 hour of human labor anywhere in the universe. And I thought that was just the coolest idea. And you just mentioned something similar to that. You know, if we simply reset the value of the dollar at 1 hour of labor, whether you're a doctor or whether you're a ditch digger, I think it could be a really, really interesting thing, you know, to just say, you know, we value labor. Now, people could get bonuses and things, but go ahead.
Well, it seems like the capitalism has really forced us into a hole, whereas like in the 1970s, a kid comes up with urethane wheels on a skateboard. He goes to his neighbor. His neighbor has a Social Security, a pension, and a savings account. And he pulls money directly out of his savings account, gives it to the kid. Boom, you're off to the races with a new business. But today, all our cell phones and our smart technology are listening to everything we say. Billionaires have access to every idea, new idea, and therefore we have no chance of ever escaping unless we are to change the way privacy and a lot of other things work within this structure. In fact, we have to learn how to live sustainably on quarter-acre lots, for example, rather than learning how to go out and dig up another Congo to dig up lithium for batteries for our electric universe. But we need.
No, I get it. You're packaging a lot of stuff in one conversation, Carlos. But I can't. No, I'm not criticizing you. I can't disagree with any of it. I'm not sure that changing our currency is going to solve a lot of those problems, and I'm very skeptical of cryptocurrencies. But just because it seems like there needs to be some central arbiter of the value of money. But I think your points are all really well made and serve as a great basis for a longer conversation that we'll have to have another time because we're out of time here. Carlos, thanks so much for the call. It's great to hear from you. We'll be back with more of your calls right after this. It's Anything Goes Friday on the Thom Hartmann Program. You know, every day here on the Thom Hartmann Program, Louise and I and our team, Sean, Nate, Shira, Dave, Chase, Sue, Nigel, Ron, we all work to put together the very, very best show we possibly can. And there's an enormous amount of work that goes into the show. And one of the things that comes out of that is a lot of content, a lot of specific information that we go through and we dig out and, you know, we want to share with you. And Sue puts that into our newsletter every week. And I think you will, if you don't already receive our newsletter, it comes in email every day, about an hour after we're off the air, or maybe a couple hours after we're off the air. And Sue goes through and pulls literally every link to every story that we talked about and puts it into the newsletter. It's free. We don't sell the list or anything. You complete safety and security. There's no charge. There's no nothing. Just, you know, plug in your email address over at thomhartmann.com. And you get signed up for the newsletter. It's all fairly obvious. You'll see it on the website. So check it out, thomhartmann.com. Thank you.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Welcome back. It's Anything Goes Friday here on the Thom Hartmann Program, taking your calls for the day. Hey, Paul in Kirkland, Washington. What's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom.
Hey, Paul.
I thought you might enjoy this little analogy about the Mueller report that I thought of, because I'm hearing the right-wingosphere say that this is a very lightly redacted report, and the Democrats aren't accepting it because they really want to push Trump into impeachment. And you've heard all these lines, right?
Mm-hmm.
So and to let everybody know, the Mueller report is free download on audible.com. There's a PDF available, and then there's the audio version in 2 parts.
Oh, wow.
And that's where my story comes today, is I downloaded the audio, and I noticed, it's about 22 hours.
Yep.
And I noticed, I thought to myself, well, that's about as long as the audio version of Herman Melville's Moby Dick.
Oh, really?
And then I thought, it's about 400 pages. But then I thought, lightly redacted 10%. Well, you know, when you read Moby Dick, it's 133 chapters. You could redact 10% and never know how Captain Ahab gets killed, and Moby Dick the whale wouldn't be in the book at all.
You're right. You're absolutely right, Paul. And the fact that the Trump administration is fighting so hard for these redactions tells me that many, if not most of these redactions, particularly now that we know that from the letters Mueller sent to Barr, that report was not the actual research, it was a summary of the research, and that it was written with a clear intention that it should be able to be released to Congress. What it says to me is that there's some really grody stuff in there. There's some nasty things that have been redacted that will reflect very, very badly on Trump and his campaign and some of the people around him.
And when they were invited, the Democrats who had security classification, had classified security clearance, were invited to read. They still redacted another. They were only given a 98%.
Yeah.
Still 2% redacted. So that's even worse. You know, I when I listened to William Barr testify at the Senate hearing, he said. When the report came out, he said, I felt that I needed to come up with some kind of bottom line conclusion. He called it a conclusion, the four-page thing that came out.
Right.
And he said, I don't like summaries because, there are a number of summaries written by the Mueller members of the Mueller team. Well, that's because the summaries don't come up with a conclusion either. So what he's saying is that he alone is entitled to come up with the one and only conclusion. Right. And if any of this reflects poorly on the president, certainly Congress has the right to have a look at it. And if they can't even have copies of it, then they can't refer to it in any closed-door sessions, committee sessions, or they can't even have a copy in hand if they want
literally can't discuss it, Paul. I'm pretty sure that the rule, the law around that, you can go into that skiff and read it, but afterwards you literally cannot discuss it in any granular way.
That's right. And so how would they be when you need to refer to footnotes and appendixes? You need to have the hard copy on hand. That's why you write things. And so they wouldn't even really be able to adequately interview Robert Mueller.
This is why they're hiding it from Congress, in my opinion.
That's right.
This thing is going to. Well, we'll see. But you combine that with this massive power grab that Trump is doing right now, saying that the executive branch is not at all answerable to the legislative branch. Period. Full stop. I imperium. Right. This is Augustus Caesar claiming the mantle, the first citizen of Rome, which is what he called himself. And
I like even better. Donald Trump once said, "I am a great Christian, and I am." So that's right out of the book of Exodus, right?
Yeah, that was Moses' question of the burning bush. Who are you? I am that I am. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, spot on. Paul, thank you. Thank you very much. Brian in Tacoma, Washington. Hey, Brian, what's on your mind today?
Hey, thanks for taking my call. I see a lot of connections that I don't hear talked about a lot on the news, MSNBC, and all these things, and a classic Republican strategy that's perfected by Limbaugh, Hannity, and Trump is projection. You can always tell what they're guilty of and up to by what they're accusing others of. It's very Hannity and Limbaugh does it all the time. You guys talked about that earlier on the program. Yep. But they've done a new twist to it. They've done a switcheroo that I haven't noticed before, and it's regarding abortion and gun control. But both of them have come up in the last week or so. And with abortion, they have gone on a full frontal, unapologetic, we don't care, we just want to get to the Supreme Court Roe v. Wade attack with their egregious, unconstitutional laws.
Right.
And then they've come out with their cover fire by accusing Democrats of doing the same thing, which they're not, with guns. Democrats just nakedly, openly admitting that they want to get rid of all guns, which they're not doing. But they've done a little switcheroo that I haven't seen before.
Well, and this is the lie that Judd Legum is pointing out. The Trump campaign right now is running ads on Facebook, hundreds of thousands of dollars a week, reaching millions, tens of millions of people every single day. Ads that say the Democrats have finally admitted that their goal is to repeal the Second Amendment, and we're not going to let them do it. No Democrat has ever said that.
Right. And they've done that at the same time where they have now finally admitted that their goal is to get to the Supreme Court.
Yeah, absolutely. Brian, it's hypocrisy squared, right? Hypocrisy is an art form. Brian, thank you very much for the call. It's Anything Goes Friday here on the Thom Hartmann Program. We'll be picking up the program, picking up your calls as we continue into our next hour, coming up on 58 minutes past the hour. We'll be right back.
listening to Thom Hartmann.
We say fight back!
We are reading from the Mueller report. This is starting at the beginning, part 1. This is page 32. And they're talking about the IRA, the Internet Research Agency, which is the Russian troll farm in St. Petersburg. In February 2017, the persona Black Fist, purporting to want to teach African Americans to protect themselves when contacted by law enforcement, hired a self-defense instructor in New York to offer classes sponsored by Black Fist. Black Fist was actually from the IRA. The IRA also recruited moderators of conservative social media groups to promote IRA-generated content, as well as recruited individuals to perform political acts, such as walking around New York City dressed up as Santa Claus with a Trump mask. And there's a whole bunch of redacted stuff. Redacted, as the IRA's online audience became larger, the IRA tracked U.S. persons with whom they communicated and had successfully tasked with tasks ranging from organizing rallies to taking pictures with certain political messages. Page 33. The top half of the page is redacted. Number 7, interactions and contacts with the Trump campaign. The investigation identified 2 different forms of connections between the IRA and members of the Trump campaign. The investigation identified no similar connections between the IRA and the Clinton campaign. First, on multiple occasions, members and surrogates of the Trump campaign promoted, typically by linking, retweeting, or similar methods of reposting, pro-Trump or anti-Clinton content published by the IRA through IRA-controlled social media accounts. Additionally, in a few instances, IRA employees represented themselves as U.S. persons to communicate with members of the Trump campaign in an effort to seek assistance and coordination on IRA-organized political rallies inside the United States. Subtopic A, Trump campaign promotion of IRA political materials. Among the U.S., quote, leaders of public opinion, end quote, targeted by the IRA were various members and surrogates of the Trump campaign. In total, Trump campaign affiliates promoted dozens of tweets, posts, and other political content created by the IRA. Posts from the IRA-controlled Twitter account at 10_GOP were cited or retweeted by multiple Trump campaign officials and surrogates, including Donald Trump Jr., Eric Trump, Kellyanne Conway, Brad Parscale, and Michael Flynn. These posts included allegations of voter fraud, as well as allegations that Secretary Clinton had mishandled classified information. On November 7th, 2016, a post from the IRA-controlled Twitter account Pamela_Moore13 was retweeted by Donald Trump Jr. On September 19, 2017, President Trump's personal account at @RealDonaldTrump responded to a tweet from the IRA-controlled account at 10GOP_GOP, the backup account of at 10_GOP TEN, this is not 10, which had already been deactivated by Twitter. The tweet read, "We love you, Mr. President." IRA employees monitored the reaction of the Trump campaign and later Trump administration officials to their tweets. For example, on August 23, 2016, the IRA-controlled persona Matt Skyber Facebook account sent a message to the U.S. Tea Party activist, writing that, quote, "Mr. Trump posted about our event in Miami. This is great," end quote. The IRA employee included a screenshot of candidate Trump's Facebook account, which included a post about the August 20, 2016 political rallies organized by the IRA out of St. Petersburg. Page 35. The top little bit of the page is redacted. It follows B, contact with Trump campaign officials in connection to rallies. Starting in June 2016, the IRA contacted different U.S. persons affiliated with the Trump campaign in an effort to coordinate pro-Trump organized rallies inside the United States. In all cases, the IRA contacted the campaign while claiming to be U.S. political activists working on behalf of a conservative grassroots organization. The IRA's contacts included requests for signs and other materials to use at rallies, as well as requests to promote the rallies and help coordinate logistics. While certain campaign volunteers agreed to provide the requested material, for example, agreeing to set aside a certain number of signs, the investigation has not identified evidence that any Trump campaign official understood that the requests were coming from foreign nationals. In sum, the investigation established that Russia interfered in the 2016 presidential election through the Active Measures social media campaign carried out by the IRA, an organization funded by Prigozhin and companies that he controlled. As explained further in Volume 1, Section 5, the office concluded, and a grand jury has alleged, that Prigozhin, his companies, and IRA employees violated U.S. law through these operations, principally by undermining through deceptive acts the work of federal agencies charged with regulating foreign influence in U.S. elections. Page 36, item number 3, Russian hacking and dumping operations. Beginning in March 2016, units of the Russian Federation's main intelligence directorate of the General Staff, the GRU, hacked the computers and email accounts of organizations, employees, and volunteers supporting the Clinton campaign, including the email account of campaign chairman John Podesta. Starting in April 2016, the GRU hacked into the computer networks of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, the DCCC, and the Democratic National Committee, the DNC. The GRU targeted hundreds of email accounts used by Clinton campaign employees, advisors, and volunteers. It's the Mueller report.
You know, every day here on the Thom Hartmann Program, Louise and I and our team, Sean, Nate, Shira, Dave, Chase, Sue, Nigel, Ron, we all work to put together the very, very best show we possibly can. And there's an enormous amount of work that goes into the show. And one of the things that comes out of that is a lot of content, a lot of specific information that we go through and we dig out and, you know, we want to share with you. And Sue puts that into our newsletter every week. And I think you will, if you don't already receive our newsletter, it comes in email every day, about an hour after we're off the air, or maybe a couple hours after we're off the air. And Sue goes through and pulls literally every link to every story that we talked about and puts it into the newsletter. It's free. We don't sell a list or anything. You complete safety and security. There's no charge. There's no nothing. Just, you know, plug in your email address over at thomhartmann.com and you get signed up for the newsletter. It's all fairly obvious. You'll see it on the website. So check it out, thomhartmann.com. Thank you.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back to the third hour of our program. Thom Hartmann here with you. A couple of stories I just wanted to touch on, and then we'll pick up your phone calls. The lines are all full. It's Anything Goes Friday here. This, I think, is one of the most consequential stories that's getting almost no coverage whatsoever. You'll recall in Vietnam, a little over 2.5 million Vietnamese died, at best estimates, and over 50,000 American soldiers. And we were lied into that war. The Gulf of Tonkin, that attack on the American, I believe it was a destroyer, whatever the ship was, never happened. It was just made up. It was a pretext for war, to expand the war, that Lyndon Johnson did. I mean, you know, it was a lie. Similarly with Iraq, there were no weapons of mass destruction. We knew there were no weapons of mass destruction. We were the ones who had sold Saddam those weapons of mass destruction in the first place. That was the Iraq Gate scandal in 1988 and what was the year? 1980, no, this was 1990-91, that Bill Barr, as Attorney General, buried. This is what made William Safire so nuts, the famous New York Times columnist who used to do this column called On Language. And the one thing he was crazed about was Bill Barr. He was the Attorney General, and he covered up
the illegal sale of weapons of mass destruction by the Bush administration and the Reagan administration, the first Bush administration, to Saddam Hussein. So we knew what he had, and we knew how out of date it was, and we knew how ineffective and what a waste of time it was. George W. Bush was lying through his teeth, as was Dick Cheney. Dick Cheney was going down to CIA headquarters and hassling people, something that had never been done before. Well, now you've got John Bolton going down to CIA headquarters, and they're trying to gin this up. Meteor Blade's writing over the Daily Kos, after pointing out, that we got lied into two different wars. On Tuesday came the take of Betsy Woodruff and Alan Rawnsley at the Daily Beast. They found the assertion that Iran was preparing to take action. The whole point that Bolton made and that the Trump administration is making is we're sending this warship into the Persian Gulf off the coast of Iran because we understand they're about to attack us or American interests or American allies. They found, this is Woodruff and Rawnsley, they found that the assertion that Iran was preparing to take action against the United States was, excuse the expression, trumped up. In other words, it ain't happening. There is no evidence of this. If there was, it would be on the front page of the New York Times. They are lying to us to set us up for Donald Trump's re-election war. You will recall that Donald Trump over and over and over again, back when Barack Obama was president, kept pointing out, in his opinion, that the best way to win re-election for a sitting president is to have a war. On November 29th, 2011, in anticipation of the 2012 elections, Donald Trump tweeted, quote, "In order to get elected, Barack Obama will start a war with Iran." Then on October 9th, 2012, a couple of weeks later, Donald Trump tweets, "Now that Obama's poll numbers are in a tailspin, watch for him to launch a strike on Iran. He is desperate." This guy has been thinking about this for a while, right? This was 2011. This was 9 years ago. If I'm doing maybe 8 years ago. Anyhow, September 16th, 2013. This is Donald Trump tweeting, "I predict that President Obama will at some point attack Iran in order to save face." This guy has no idea what Iran is. He has never been there. He's probably never even seen pictures of Iran. He doesn't get it, that you're not talking about an Iraq that had been crippled by a decade of sanctions and a war George Herbert Walker Bush fought. And still, it's been, 15 years, something like that. We haven't been able to control Iraq. And we're going to take down Iran? Iran is a fully developed, fully modern country with a substantial military, by the way. So, but I don't think that Trump actually realizes this. And again, November 10th, 2013. "Remember that I predicted long ago that President Obama will attack Iran because of his inability to negotiate properly. He's not skilled." Right. So now we find out that he is actually lying, the Trump administration, because John Bolton wants his war. And Donald Trump thinks, hey, if I have a war, I'll get reelected. I wish the media would be paying more attention to this. Ron in Buffalo, New York. Hey, Ron, it's Anything Goes Friday. What's on your mind today?
Yeah, you had mentioned way back an hour or so ago about possible general strike. If a union or group of union leaders did that, wouldn't that violate Taft-Hartley? Because Taft-Hartley, specifically this idea of secondary boycotts or one union helping another union or just generally doing things of a political nature that aren't specific to a particular issue. I thought that somebody would make a case against that and try to put them all in jail, wouldn't they?
I think you're probably right, Ron. And Taft-Hartley does have a lot of those sort of weird provisions that make it harder for unions to cooperate. On the other hand, you've got unions that are members of union associations. I believe the UAW is still part of the AFL-CIO. And so, an umbrella union could probably do something like that. But I was not advocating that because I don't think it'll work in America. We've got 6% of our private workforce is unionized. And, another 2% of our workforce, it goes up to 11%. So it must be another 5% of our workforce is, federal and state employees who are unionized. Yeah. So you got a total of 11% of the country unionized. That's not enough mass. That's not enough of a threshold to actually run a general strike. So the caller who called up and said, why don't we just all take, a month off work? It's like, you've got literally half of America cannot sustain a $400 expense that they're not expecting. You know, a breakdown of their car or a medical expense. Literally half of America can't do that. And so clearly they couldn't pass on going to work for a month. And, you know, without a union paying strike pay and things like that. You know, it works in Germany where you got 80% unionization, or, you know, in most of the European countries where it runs for anywhere from 75 to 95% unionization. But it won't work here. You know, Reaganism has destroyed the workers' rights.
And also, the union movement in this country never was that ideological. You know, right. As much as, you know, because I think of McCarthyism and also the divide and conquer, the North and South, whatever, that the power structure is used. In Europe, they're overtly, you're a socialist? Yeah, I'm a socialist. So what? I believe this and this and this. In this country, we never had that union, except for, well, I shouldn't say never, but it never became the predominant ideology that we want a social democracy with certain rights guaranteed that capitalists can't take away from us.
Yeah, I would argue that actually we did in the 30s and the early 40s, and maybe even through the end of the 40s.
Yeah, and then it was crushed. It was crushed during the McCarthy period, during that, you know, this Cold War scare. And
well, in 1947, Taft-Hartley, where you started this conversation. I mean, that's really what took down the union movement in the United States. It gave individual states the right to ban closed shops.
Why hasn't anybody ever, I've never heard a Democrat, well, I shouldn't say that, I think Fred Harris back in the 60s wanted to repeal it, but why isn't Bernie Sanders on this saying, you know, we got to, look.
Bernie on this program has probably said 100 times we should repeal Taft-Hartley.
Oh, did he?
Absolutely.
My mistake, then.
It is a mantra for people in the Progressive Caucus. Mark Pocan has said it. I'm not sure if the topic has ever come up for Ro Khanna, but I'm sure he would advocate that. I don't think there's a Democrat out there. I mean, you know, Taft-Hartley, Harry Truman vetoed it, and Congress overrode his veto. I mean, that was that little 2-year window where the Republicans controlled the House. And it was this anomalous time, and no Democrat has been willing to go to the mat to take it down since, which in my opinion, is just a massive strategic error that the Democrats really should have been paying attention to this and doing something about it, because Taft-Hartley it's poison. It's poison for working people. It's poison for democracy. And, of course, it was intended as poison for unions. And it has taken us from, you know, being a third unionized to being, you know, 11%, in the private sector, 6%. It's nuts. Ron, thanks for the call. And thanks for listening to us on Progressive Voices there in Buffalo. We'll be back. It's Anything Goes Friday on the Thom Hartmann Program, exposing the con and conservative.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Right back with your calls on Anything Goes Friday. Stick around. And welcome back. Kathy in Madison, Wisconsin. Hey, Kathy, thanks for watching Free Speech TV. What's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. Apropos to the discussion about labor, I've been in the movement for 50 years, so
good on you.
I kind of got this whole thing down. Most non-union workers actually have more rights to strike than people in labor unions. That's because
it's because they're not regulated.
Yeah, exactly, because unions are very highly regulated. Plus, when they negotiate contracts, they lock in to the period of the contract, and then you know that they have to be released by a mediator or arbitrator to strike in the course of contract negotiations. Now, what the NFL has done, which is very clever but also risky, is that when they've got to be with the employer, especially around contract time, they temporarily decertify their union so they're not covered by that stuff, and they go out and strike, and then they come back.
That's interesting.
Yes, really, that's what they do.
So Taft-Hartley
and the other thing is, non-union workers were very successful a few years ago with these limited one-day actions, especially in the retail and fast food industries, and some of them got in a jam, but because they were backed up by other unions in the labor movement, didn't necessarily represent them. They pushed stuff through the NLRB, and that was sustained in most cases that the employers could not take action against them.
Yeah.
So the thing is, on a strike like that, like you pointed out, You definitely don't want to put people in a position, hard pressed as they are, with losing, like you said, $400 or even more. One-day rolling strikes even, where you're targeting one industry here, something else there, or you get non-union workers to participate in a day, could be very effective. It would, however, take massive organization. What I've always thought, in this day and age, considering the downside for workers, is maybe something could be more organized, like Don't Buy Day, sending corporate America a message and hitting them where they hurt.
Yeah, a boycott, in other words. Yeah.
Yeah, a boycott, but you just don't buy anything. Or what if they even targeted one corporation, huge corporation like Amazon? Just stop buying their stuff online for a day.
Here's the problem with those kinds of boycotts, Kathy. They've been tried, and what happens is you'll see a one-day drop in sales, and then the next day the sales goes up 20% over the norm because people just don't buy for a day, but then they buy twice as much the next day.
Ways to send powerful messages. So I just wanted to let you know that non-union workers who are in certain industries covered by the NLRA do, in fact, have the right to concerted activities and be protected from employer retaliation.
Good. The thing to keep an eye on, in my opinion, right now, the thing that I'm fascinated by, and I'm not sure where to get good news on this, but Uber and Lyft had a 3-hour strike yesterday. And not all their drivers participated. You could still get an Uber and a Lyft during that strike time. It's just that they were surge pricing because they had fewer people driving. And so Uber and Lyft arguably made more money during the strike. But I'm waiting to see if either of those companies are going to retaliate against those workers, or if they're going to reward the ones who didn't strike. And if they do, that's going to be a huge message to other big companies in America that, the gloves are off. It's fine to, beat up your employees, do anything you want to them. Not that they don't already think that, but, so we'll see where this goes. Kathy, thank you for a very, very thoughtful and insightful commentary. I appreciate the call. We'll be right back. What time is it? Coming up on 20 minutes past the hour. Every day here on the Thom Hartmann Program, Louise and I and our team, Sean, Nate, Shira, Dave, Chase, Sue, Nigel, Ron, we all work to put together the very, very best show we possibly can. And there's an enormous amount of work that goes into the show. And one of the things that comes out of that is a lot of content, a lot of specific information that we go through and we dig out and, we want to share with you. And Sue puts that into our newsletter every week. And I think you will, if you don't already receive our newsletter, it comes in email every day, about an hour after we're off the air, or maybe a couple hours after we're off the air. And Sue goes through and pulls literally every link to every story that we talked about and puts it into the newsletter. It's free. We don't sell the list or anything. Complete safety and security. There's no charge. There's no nothing. Just, plug in your email address over at thomhartmann.com. And you get signed up for the newsletter. It's all fairly obvious. You'll see it on the website. So check it out, thomhartmann.com. Thank you.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
And welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. And Marie in Pipe Creek, Texas. Hey, Marie, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. Thanks for taking my call. Sure. I was just going to comment on the hypocrisy of those of the right to lifers. And, they are the ones that support the military, or most of them. And the military is aiding Saudi Arabia, say, in bombing Yemen. What about the pregnant women and the unborn babies that they're killing there?
Yeah.
But of course, they're a different color. And the other thing, there are a lot of right to lifers that are supporting Israel. Isn't abortion legal in Israel?
Yes,
and
it's paid for by the National Health Insurance Program. And it's illegal in Saudi Arabia, by the way, or at least I believe it is.
There's a hypocrisy there.
Yeah.
And then the other thing about these laws that are, prohibiting women from getting abortions, they're the only ones that are being targeted here. Right. They're the only ones that are going to face legal problems with this. What about the men? What about the men that help these?
Yeah,
ladies
in
become
Georgia,
pregnant?
it's a death penalty for having an abortion after 6 weeks, when most women don't even know that they're pregnant. In Georgia, it's a death penalty. In Ohio, it's 99 years. I mean, this is what's happening, and the men are getting off scot-free because it's largely men who are promoting this kind of legislation, and it's all about the men, Marie. I mean, the freak out is, hey, half those aborted babies are men. We can't have that. Marie, your point is very, very well taken. Not to mention the fact that so many of these right-to-lifers are also big fans of the death penalty, of capital punishment. It's bizarre. Marie, thank you for the call. Bill in St. Helens, Oregon. Hey, Bill, what's up?
Hey, Tom. We all know that the Constitution, hopefully, we all know that the Constitution says that the Electoral College votes will be by a clear majority for both the president and separately for the vice president. So. We do this plurality thing in most states, I think all but a couple. So just for giggles, I did take the 2016 official election results for voting, and I chunked them in, and I just made them proportional instead of plurality. And guess what? Trump gets 251 electoral votes. Clinton gets 258 electoral votes, and all the independents get 29. So. Nobody would have gotten a majority, but Clinton won.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think Clinton won pretty much any way you count it, except the Electoral College, which was put into the Constitution in part to give a little more political power to the slave states.
Yeah, I actually calculated them back to 2000, and basically 2000, 2004, 2000 nobody actually got a majority, but.
Oh, Gore beat Bush by 500,000 votes in the 2000 election.
Oh, of course he did, and he would have gotten more if he'd gotten Florida the way he should have, the electoral votes from Florida. But and then 2004, 2008, they were true winners. 2004 was Bush. 2008 and 2012, both Obama got a very substantial majority.
Yeah, there's a fair amount of evidence that actually in the 2004 election, John Kerry won Ohio. And that it was Ken Blackwell basically robbed us of a Kerry presidency. But what would have been particularly interesting would be that Kerry would have won the Electoral College but lost the popular vote, because Bush actually, when he ran for re-election in 2004, and this, of course, is what Trump is looking at. Presidents during times of war get reelected. It's just that simple. But he would have been, but Gore would have become president, or excuse me, John Kerry would have become president via the Electoral College, not the popular vote. And you wonder if that had happened, if George W. Bush, I'm guessing he probably would have given up his seat and said, okay, that's the name of the game. I don't think Donald Trump will, if that's what happens in 2020.
Well, if my point here was, if we actually did electoral votes proportionally, it would actually force ranked choice voting. It would force it. There would be no choice. And by the way, as a point of curiosity for Oregon here, Oregon Constitution they actually changed the Constitution in 1908 to say, yes, we will do the vote by a plurality, but we also approve doing the vote by proportional representation. And if anybody wants to change the law, it's constitutional. We've already.
That's interesting.
Hey, was interesting.
Bill, thanks for that. I appreciate it. That's fascinating stuff. Bill, thank you. Ken in Lafayette, Colorado. Hey, Ken, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. Thanks for taking my call. Can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine. We've got about 50 seconds here, Ken.
Okay. So, question on, you had Richard Mack on, Sheriff Richard Mack, a while back, and as a person of color, that's very disturbing. Well, even if you're not a person of color, that's very disturbing, because we've got basically law enforcement disobeying laws. Is there any recourse as a citizen? Is there a way?
Most sheriffs are elected. And in fact, that's part of why Richard Mack and his buddies claim that they are, the most powerful law enforcement group in the United States. And so the way that you challenge them is at the ballot box.
You just vote them out.
Yeah, I don't know of a legal argument. I mean, their whole legal argument that they're the ultimate law enforcement authorities and all this kind of stuff is in large part. In some states, they actually have a lot more authority than in others, but it's by and large BS. But But yeah, I share your concern, Ken. And now we've got right across the border here, Washington State, the sheriffs, more than half of the sheriffs, county sheriffs in Washington State, are refusing to enforce the new gun control law there. Ken, thanks a lot for the call. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Anything Goes Friday. More of your calls in just a moment. We are reading from the Mueller report. This is starting at the beginning, part 1. This is page 32. And they're talking about the IRA, the Internet Research Agency, which is the Russian troll farm in St. Petersburg. In February 2017, the persona Black Fist, purporting to want to teach African Americans to protect themselves when contacted by law enforcement, hired a self-defense instructor in New York to offer classes sponsored by Black Fist. Black Fist was actually from the IRA. The IRA also recruited moderators of conservative social media groups to promote IRA-generated content, as well as recruited individuals to perform political acts, such as walking around New York City dressed up as Santa Claus with a Trump mask. And there's a whole bunch of redacted stuff. Redacted, as the IRA's online audience became larger, the IRA tracked U.S. persons with whom they communicated and had successfully tasked with tasks ranging from organizing rallies to taking pictures with certain political messages. Page 33. The top half of the page is redacted. Number 7, interactions and contacts with the Trump campaign. The investigation identified 2 different forms of connections between the IRA and members of the Trump campaign. The investigation identified no similar connections between the IRA and the Clinton campaign. First, on multiple occasions, members and surrogates of the Trump campaign promoted, typically by linking, retweeting, or similar methods of reposting, pro-Trump or anti-Clinton content published by the IRA through IRA-controlled social media accounts. Additionally, in a few instances, IRA employees represented themselves as U.S. persons to communicate with members of the Trump campaign in an effort to seek assistance and coordination on IRA-organized political rallies inside the United States. Subtopic A, Trump campaign promotion of IRA political materials. Among the U.S., quote, leaders of public opinion, end quote, targeted by the IRA were various members and surrogates of the Trump campaign. In total, Trump campaign affiliates promoted dozens of tweets, posts, and other political content created by the IRA. Posts from the IRA-controlled Twitter account at 10_GOP were cited or retweeted by multiple Trump campaign officials and surrogates, including Donald Trump Jr., Eric Trump, Kellyanne Conway, Brad Parscale, and Michael Flynn. These posts included allegations of voter fraud, as well as allegations that Secretary Clinton had mishandled classified information. On November 7th, 2016, a post from the IRA-controlled Twitter account Pamela_Moore13 was retweeted by Donald Trump Jr. On September 19, 2017, President Trump's personal account at @RealDonaldTrump responded to a tweet from the IRA-controlled account at 10GOP_GOP, the backup account of at 10_GOP_TEN. This is not 10, which had already been deactivated by Twitter. The tweet read, "We love you, Mr. President." IRA employees monitored the reaction of the Trump campaign and later Trump administration officials to their tweets. For example, on August 23, 2016, the IRA-controlled persona Matt Skyber Facebook account sent a message to the U.S. Tea Party activist, writing that, quote, "Mr. Trump posted about our event in Miami. This is great," end quote. The IRA employee included a screenshot of candidate Trump's Facebook account, which included a post about the August 20, 2016 political rallies organized by the IRA out of St. Petersburg. Page 35. The top little bit of the page is redacted. It follows B, contact with Trump campaign officials in connection to rallies. Starting in June 2016, the IRA contacted different U.S. persons affiliated with the Trump campaign in an effort to coordinate pro-Trump organized rallies inside the United States.
In all cases, the IRA contacted the campaign while claiming to be U.S. political activists working on behalf of a conservative grassroots organization. The IRA's contacts included requests for signs and other materials to use at rallies, as well as requests to promote the rallies and help coordinate logistics. While certain campaign volunteers agreed to provide the requested material, for example, agreeing to set aside a certain number of signs, the investigation has not identified evidence that any Trump campaign official understood that the requests were coming from foreign nationals. In sum, the investigation established that Russia interfered in the 2016 presidential election through the Active Measures social media campaign carried out by the IRA, an organization funded by Prigozhin and companies that he controlled. As explained further in Volume 1, Section 5, the office concluded, and a grand jury has alleged, that Prigozhin, his companies, and IRA employees violated U.S. law through these operations, principally by undermining through deceptive acts the work of federal agencies charged with regulating foreign influence in U.S. elections. Page 36, item number 3, Russian hacking and dumping operations. Beginning in March 2016, units of the Russian Federation's main intelligence directorate of the General Staff, the GRU, hacked the computers and email accounts of organizations, employees, and volunteers supporting the Clinton campaign, including the email account of campaign chairman John Podesta. Starting in April 2016, the GRU hacked into the computer networks of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, the DCCC, and the Democratic National Committee, the DNC. The GRU targeted hundreds of email accounts used by Clinton campaign employees, advisors, and volunteers. It's the Mueller report.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Yeah, Donald Trump won a tournament in 2018, a club championship at Mar-a-Lago. But it's a weird little story here. Rick Riley just published a book called Commander-in-Cheat. And Trump was playing golf, and he noticed that film financier Ted Virtue, a guy who bankrolls big movies, was playing a round of golf with his son, who was 10 or 11 years old. And so Trump challenges Virtue and his son to play 6 holes for the club championship. And then I'll quote, this is quoting from Rick Riley, the sports writer. They get to a hole with a big pond on it. Both Ted and his son hit the ball on the green, and Trump hits his into the water. By the time they get to the hole, Trump is lining up the kid's ball, only now it's his ball, and the caddy has switched it. Riley said Virtue's son tried to protest, but the president's caddy said, no, this is the president's ball. Your ball went in the water. The guy cheats when he's playing golf with an 11-year-old. This is our president? Honest to God? Bob in, hang on just a second here. There we go. Bob in Denver, Colorado. Hey, Bob, what's on your mind?
How you doing?
Good. What's up?
I'll tell you, David Sirota says hello the last time I talked to him.
Oh, great. David's a good guy. He's really a good guy.
His wife is a state rep now, by the way.
Yep, I know. I
didn't know if you knew that or not.
Yep.
Okay, the one thing I wanted to comment on is I was in the Department of Labor in when Clinton passed the NAFTA. And ever since that happened, and I believe back then that it was a real disaster in waiting. And anybody I've ever talked to since and talked about NAFTA, they blame Clinton for it and the Democrats.
Well, keep in mind, George Herbert Walker Bush also, George Bush, that was there were 3 people in that race. Both Bush and Clinton were in favor of NAFTA. It was Ross Perot who was standing on the sidelines going, giant sucking sound from the South. And he got 20% of the vote, 19.5% of the vote.
Yeah, and the other thing, too, I want to let you know is that the thing about it is, and this came up in the Reagan era, and I've been following it ever since, and Robert Reich predicts that the jobs in the United States will be over 50% in the next 10 years. It'll be a gig economy, and that the future, and I've read things where the future for the American worker is to be, most of the jobs will be gig jobs like they have with Goober.
Yeah. Well, given how in most states, people who work are what are called employees at will, which means they can be fired anytime for any reason. There are a few states that give better protections to employees, but given that, I think you could probably define the vast majority of jobs as gig jobs, even if they're not technically gig jobs. And this is, it's probably 80-90% of American workers are at that level of insecurity where, on a whim, their employer could just blow them off. And particularly if they offend the employer. So.
Yeah. And one final thing, I'll let you go. In Jefferson County, which is the bellwether county for the nation, in the last
in Colorado?
election, the Democrats took every county job. We only have one job that's not Democratic, and that's the sheriff.
Wow. Now, Jefferson County, is that part of Denver or?
Westminster. I live in Westminster. I'm on the very corner. It's a very big county.
Right.
And the only thing we don't have is one county commissioner and the sheriff. And otherwise, we turned over the coroner, the surveyor. We won every election in that category, and we had, and some of those we had not won in years, and we won the Attorney General of Colorado for the first time in 40 years.
Well, let's hope that's a precursor, a bellwether, an indicator of what's going to happen a year and a half from now in November of 2020. Bob, thanks for the call.
Doing great, by the way.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you, Bob. Appreciate the call. Norma in Montgomery, Alabama. Hey, Norma, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Dr. Tom. Yesterday in our state house, there was a huge fight over abortion bill. And the Right to Lifers are protesting and demanding that we remove the exception for rape and the exception to save a mother's life. And this is disgusting because when you have a young girl who's raped, any man will protect his son's growth plates in his arms and legs so he can throw a ball. But these men are not thinking about the growth plates of a young girl. Those bones in the pelvic girdle are not developed enough to carry a pregnancy. Actually, no young girl should get pregnant until she's at least 18. And all over the world, they're lowering the age of consent so they don't get charged with rape. They can say she wanted it.
Right.
But this is disgusting, and the only way that we're going to stop this sort of thing is to elect people. And our Democratic Party is refusing to have the election that the DNC said to reelect the board for the state Democratic Party.
This is in Alabama?
Yes. And if we don't get people on the ballot, we only have about 3 weeks at the end of January to get people on the ballot, which means we have 8 months to find people, get the petition signed, get the fees raised to pay to get somebody on the ballot, and then work next year to get them elected. Mm-hmm. This needs to be done all over the country so that we can get rid of these people who are so narrow-minded and want to control women. They have no control over themselves. They think they have a right to sex, and they seem to think that they own women's bodies. But this is disgusting because you cannot allow a child to carry a pregnancy because she cannot deliver the baby. That means a cesarean. And if you don't have health care, you're going to go in debt for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
But it also means that from then on, any following pregnancies, that young girl will have to have another cesarean. And they're not even talking about that in the State House.
Not to mention the fact that a cesarean, a baby born by cesarean actually has poorer health outcomes, typically in a couple of very specific areas, but in any case, poorer health outcomes lifetime than a baby who's born vaginally.
Yes.
Normal birth.
All they're doing is they are trying to exercise control over women. And they're not even thinking about the life of the child. And once the baby is born, there is no help to raise the child. And they're not even putting anything that if, you can check for any kind of health problems through the early months of pregnancy, but they're not even talking about checking for DNA to prove that this man or boy impregnated the girl and that demands support through the entire pregnancy.
Yeah, if they're going to if they're going to declare that a 6-week-old zygote or whatever it's called at that stage of development is a human who has full human rights, then is that the point at which the father should start paying child support? I mean,
that is true. That's the way it should be, but that's not being done. They want the baby to be born and then decide that the child is his, and they're not going to make it retroactive.
And if these people had any integrity at all, they would be saying, okay, we want pregnancies to go to full term, therefore we're going to fund and fund well birth control education and birth control products for women who don't want to get pregnant, so that we're not dealing with unwanted pregnancies, number one. Number two, a national health care system that includes maternal health and all these, prematernal things. And number three, a national infrastructure to deal with children who are born and mom wants to put them up for adoption. And I'm not talking about what we have right now. I'm talking about something much more comprehensive. They're not doing any of that, which tells me that this is all about religion. This is all about this whole Catholic and now the, and I think it was the it was in the
I think
80s.
It's also about control, Dr. Tom.
Yeah.
And it also, men are not thinking about the fact that this is now going to be your child, it's going to be your grandchild, and it has a right to the family assets.
Yeah.
It has a right to stick its feet under your Thanksgiving dinner table. It has a right to expect a present under the Christmas tree. And if you're such a good Christian, you should be including this unwanted child in your family, because this is an unwanted child. All they're doing is forcing a woman to give birth to protect the unborn child.
Yeah, I get it.
There's nothing there.
I get it. I get it. No, I'm with you, Norma. Norma, thank you for the call. Denny in Pine Top, Arizona. Hey, Denny, what's on your mind?
Hey, how you doing? I don't know how you still have all that wonderful hair, man. I'd pulled it out by now. You're amazing. Listen.
Thank you, Denny. What's up?
I grew up on the streets of Flint, ran with the likes of Michael Moore, Dan Kildee. I'm a combat agent, Orange paratrooper, ex-cop. Here's what's happening. When Michelle says, when they go low, we go high, Michael Moore says, when they go low, hey, we might as well go down with them, or promise them anything. When we get the chance between now and 2020, impeach just about every Republican that we can in terms of, as the parade of witnesses start to come forth. It will be us folks out here. We're not law school graduates. We're busy helping our children raise our grandchildren. And I worked with, trained with, jumped with Marines when Mueller comes off the bench from civilian life. That American Republican is going to start the parade of witnesses, which will lead to others. And in the long run, before 2020, we will flip 17 senators. And then it's time to start with the brand new Green Deal.
There you go. From your lips to God's ears, Denny. Wouldn't it be nice? We'll see. I mean, it's really up to us. So let's get active. We'll be back. We're going to check in with Talk Media News in about 4 minutes.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Luke Vargas is going to drop by in 4 minutes and bring us up to date on what's going on in the world today. And welcome back. Eric, watching Free Speech TV in Middletown, New York. Hey, Eric, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom, happy Friday to you. Thanks for taking my call.
Thank you.
I am calling to call your attention to a jury verdict from a couple days ago in the lower Hudson Valley of New York, where a drug testing laboratory working under contract for the criminal justice system there in Orange County was found unanimously by a verdict to have been fraudulently reporting drug test results on probationers.
Are you one of those people, Eric?
I'm the guy that's been calling you for years, Tom, about pushing his own lawsuit.
I thought so. You've been working on this for a long time, so you finally won your case.
Got a verdict, and now I'm going after some other people because so much information came out in the trial process. I have 11 years of litigation records, and there was only the briefest tiny bit of redacting in it all, Tom, and it was the remarks of one ethical prosecutor who told the probation department, you have to drop this case, you have no evidence, and this guy's going to prevail if you try and take him to trial. And they blacked out his remarks, and they proceeded falsely and maliciously prosecuting me for 3 months, which
Amazing.
Pretty much ended my life. Over the course of today, you've mentioned the $400 hit that most families can't take. That was at least a $20,000 hit for me at that time.
Wow, because the drug test company was lying to you. That's amazing. Eric, congratulations. I'm so happy to hear that you've resolved this, that you're doing well, and that you've got more battles to fight. I wish you the very best.
They're still doing it. They're still doing it to millions. And,
of course. I mean, it's the whole drug test thing is by and large a scam. Not to say that you can't actually test for drugs, but it's a hustle. It's a moneymaker. Eric, I want to get a couple more calls in if I possibly can here before we're all done. Thank you. Good luck, Eric. Gordon in Stamford, Connecticut. Hey, Gordon, what's on your mind today?
Yes. Can you hear me, Tom?
Just fine.
Good. I had an idea on how we could improve the ethics, greatly increase the ethics in the House and the Senate by having a system of compulsory recusal. That means that if any representative or senator receive monies from any donor, they should be forbidden to debate or vote on issues relating to that company.
That's great. You're going a whole big step beyond what I did. In my book, Rebooting the American Dream, I had a chapter called Make Congressmen Wear NASCAR patches, or members of Congress wear NASCAR patches, to indicate who their donors are. But you're suggesting that they simply should not be able to vote on any legislation that would benefit an industry that has donated money to their campaigns. I think that's brilliant, Gordon. Have you presented this to any politicians? Have you heard anything about this?
You're the first person, Tom. I hope that you could maybe promote this.
Okay, well, let me actually. Here's a clue. It's Pocan is on Monday, right, Sean? Yeah, Congressman Mark Pocan couldn't do our show this week. On Wednesday they had a vote, and today, and he was going to do today, and today they had a vote. So he ended up not showing up. So he's going to be on Monday of next week. It's getting kind of squirrely with Congress back in session, and so I would suggest you call in while he's on and pitch it to him.
They could include this in Bill number 1 because there's some ethics thing there.
Yeah, except H.R. 1 has already passed the House, so they're not going to modify that. But I think it's a brilliant idea. Gordon, thank you very much for the call. Spot on. Okay, we're going to check in with Luke Vargas with Talk Media News in a moment and find out what's going on in the world. Stick around. We'll be right back. It's coming up on 10 minutes before the hour. Every day here on the Thom Hartmann Program, Louise and I and our team, Sean, Nate, Shira, Dave, Chase, Sue, Nigel, Ron, we all work to put together the very, very best show we possibly can. And there's an enormous amount of work that goes into the show. And one of the things that comes out of that is a lot of content, a lot of specific information that we go through and we dig out and we want to share with you. And Sue puts that into our newsletter every week. And I think you will, if you don't already receive our newsletter, it comes in email every day, about an hour after we're off the air, or maybe a couple hours after we're off the air. And Sue goes through and pulls literally every link to every story that we talked about and puts it into the newsletter. It's free. We don't sell the list or anything. You complete safety and security. There's no charge. There's no nothing. Just, plug in your email address over at thomhartmann.com. And you get signed up for the newsletter. It's all fairly obvious. You'll see it on the website. So check it out, thomhartmann.com. Thank you.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Thom Hartmann. Welcome back. Just a quick heads up, by the way. I've mentioned several times in the last week or so that Marianne Williamson just needed about 3,000 people to donate to her campaign to hit that 65,000 threshold that gets her on the debate stage. She has met that threshold. Now Jay Inslee is another really great candidate. He's made basically the focus of his candidacy climate change, and he's about 15,000 donors short. So, even $2 sent his way will help a lot. So let's check in with Talk Media News here and find out what's going on in the world today. This report brought to you by goatsfortheoldgoat.com and loving what you do. Ellen Ratner's new book on the line with us is the chief foreign correspondent for Talk Media News, Luke Vargas, live from New York today. He does a 2-minute podcast as well. Luke, tariffs on China today. What do you think? What's conventional wisdom on how this is going to play out, and what's your take on it?
Well, I think the conventional wisdom is that the biggest category of sort of, so here's what retailers have done thus far. You know, the first few rounds of tariffs, including the ones that are currently in effect, were supposed to be felt by businesses which weren't selling consumer products. The idea being, you know, if you're making something with rolled aluminum, you could stockpile that if you saw a tariff coming down the line. Maybe it would be a year or two of pain, but you can try to insulate consumers from those tariffs.
Right.
The new batch of tariffs, if a company has tried to shield consumers to date, they're not going to be able to do that any longer. I mean, this is a 2.5-fold increase here. The New York Times has a really, really useful resource that sort of goes category by category and shows how this is going to impact consumers. And it looks like we should be expecting furniture, things made with various fabrics, as well as computers to be the biggest hit. That, you know, about half of the products, so that's $100 billion worth of the products covered in these latest tariffs are things that China basically produces all of the world's supplies. So there's not even a choice in many of these categories for consumers to look elsewhere for a competitive product. And again, it just sort of underscores the seeming absurdity of Trump's conclusion about these tariffs.
The flip side of that, though, is that
this is money just going into the U.S. coffers, which it isn't.
The flip side of that is, how did China end up the sole source distributor for most of those things? China had tariffs. In fact, they still have the equivalent of tariffs. They protected their domestic market, and they protected their international markets. Japan does it. Taiwan does it. South Korea does it. All the European countries do it. They don't call them tariffs now. Mostly it's reversible VAT taxes, but they're functionally the same thing. They're about a 30% imposition on imported goods. When you consider, like Germany, for example, 17% discount on exported German goods to do away with the VAT tax, 17% tax on imported goods for the VAT tax. That's 7, 14, that's 34% right there. So, you know, I think that Trump is doing this the wrong way, but I think that this is going to be a huge winner for him in 2020, because working people all across America know that protectionist trade policies built this country. And dismantling those protectionist trade policies during the Clinton administration, began under Reagan, but it really went on steroids with Clinton. Wiped out organized labor, wiped out manufacturing in this country. Anyhow, back to you. So
yeah, we'll see. I mean, I guess the thing to watch is going to be really whether or not, as we've seen with past deals, that this is President Trump's last move, his last threat right before shaking hands with the Chinese and agreeing to something. I mean, we have seen even today trade negotiators saying they had a successful last session in Washington, D.C. It doesn't appear like things broke apart. And so if the momentum continues and we may only be days away from a resolution, I guess that's people's hopes. But again, particularly if you're in the farming community, I think, and you have been told specifically by the Department of Agriculture, there is no more billions of dollars of sort of trade remedies coming your way to offset the cost of these tariffs.
Yeah, those people are screwed. Yeah, I get it. And this is what Trump does. You know, he creates a crisis, and then he solves the crisis, which was unnecessary in the first place, and then he declares himself the winner because he solved the crisis. It's bizarre. I notice Iran says it's not interested in holding negotiations with the U.S. over a replacement nuclear deal. I mean, Trump would love, I think, to have a replacement deal, don't you?
He would love it, but he's asking too much. I mean, to ask Iran to stop supporting various groups all over the Middle East would require a reset of their entire country's grand strategy, which is something that no country is ever willing to negotiate. I think we're getting a better and better sign, particularly coming from European capitals this week, that Iran wants to keep negotiating. It is threatening to do some enrichment-related activity that would sort of violate the nuclear agreement on the fringes, but not really undermine it. I think they're playing a game that goes way past 2020. saying, look, if we can make some moves here, if we can maybe get something from the U.S. without giving up too much. But I do not anticipate, like you saw with North Korea, there being much of a high likelihood Trump can drive Iran to the negotiating table. No. They just rather wait this out and hope he doesn't get reelected.
I agree. And Mexico turned down U.S. Drug money, essentially money to stop the drug trade. Do you think that AMLO is thinking of decriminalizing drugs or something like that?
Yeah, he just released a 5-year plan for the country yesterday, which does call for the decriminalization of all drugs. There's a lot of steps that would need to happen before that occurs, but I think that's a welcome shift.
Just like both Bolivia and Portugal have done this.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. Fascinating. Luke Vargas with Talk Media News, talkmedianews.com, and of course Luke's podcast. You can find them wherever fine podcasts are available. Thanks, Luke.
Thank you.
Great talking with you. Thank you for being with us. I hope you have a wonderful Friday, a great weekend. And don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. It wasn't organized that way. It's never worked as a spectator sport. No democracy in history has ever functioned if its people don't get involved. So please, get out there, get active, tag, you're it. We'll see you on Monday. Have a great weekend.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.
We say fight back!